Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Sunday the 28th of May. Today, Holly Willoughby says she's hurt over the Philip Schofield affair lies. So as his rock crumbles, is there any way back? The Home Office starts ad campaigns to deter Albanian migrants from coming to the UK. Will the government successfully bring the migration numbers down?
And TransPennine Express services will be nationalised from today, but passengers are warned improvements will take time. And this is what it looks like at Gatwick yesterday after a major failure of the e-gate system. But we want to know, how was your journey through the border the last time you went on holiday?
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Dawn Neeson. And this is...
And before we get into our main news this morning, what I want to ask about is chips. We're talking to a chip shop owner a little bit later on.
Yes.
Because there's real concern over the price of potatoes, right? It's about 25 quid for a big bag of spuds, and it's causing a lot of chippies to close down.
And you know, and we love our chips in this country, don't we?
We do.
We really do love our chips.
But how do you have them?
How do you... Well, there's this gravy thing going on. Now, this is the north-south divide.
Chips and gravy.
Am I being northist here? Is northist a word?
It could be.
It is a word now. There you go. Gravy on chips or vinegar. This is the big row, isn't it? Not at the same time.
You see, if you have lots and lots of salt and vinegar, you want the scraps in the bottom, obviously.
How do you take your chips?
I want lots of salt and vinegar, preferably a bit of mushy peas.
Mushy peas. Mushy peas are wrong as well, you know that.
You
know, onion vinegar.
Onion vinegar. I've never tried that.
The vinegar from a jar of pickled onions over your chips. Lovely.
Oh, no, that'd work. I could do that. Or a bit of curry sauce. A chip shop special curry sauce.
Hope you're enjoying your breakfast this morning out there. You now have an image of curry sauce on chips for breakfast.
Yeah, why not?
That is wrong.
Lovely.
No.
Anyway, if you've got a way that you prefer your chip shop chips, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. But now on to more serious matters again. It's on all the papers again this morning. It just will not go away. Holly Willoughby last night said the admission of the previously denied relationship from Philip Schofield was very hurtful.
Right, OK, ITV had denied they had any evidence of such a relationship between Schofield and a much younger staff member when it first investigated the rumour in 2020.
Well, an insider has suggested this morning could be axed.
Wow. Joining us now is showbiz reporter Stephanie Thatcherism. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Dawn
They've got
and Stephen.
front pages. Every single paper.
This story is not going to give up anytime soon, and you know, there just seems like there's more damaging bombshells that keeps coming up and keeps coming out more. And to be honest, because it's a blame game now, we know the facts, but now people are looking for who is going to take blame for this. You know, we know Philip Schofield has admitted to having an affair with this younger male colleague, but it's that duty of care that people are thinking. Does it lie with ITV, who has said they did investigate this in 2020 and both parties denied it? And now Holly, because people are saying Holly must have known. Look how close they are. They have a close friendship. They go on holidays together. That is her co-presenter. Well, that was her co-presenter. So how does she not know? And I think now people are trying to save themselves, and that's why Holly has put out this statement. But sometimes it feels a little bit too late now that this morning brand has been tainted.
Because it's about trust, isn't it? And the problem with all of this, look, maybe Holly Willoughby is being absolutely truthful. Maybe she asked him about the rumours, he denied it, so she believed it.
Yeah.
But the problem is, the rest of it, I mean, certainly in the news business, the rest of us, we know the name of this young man.
We do.
Because we've known it for years.
Yep, and you can just go on Twitter and you see that image of him being plastered all over Twitter, all over social media. So it's hard to deny that this is such a big situation. And as the Mail says, he was 15 when he met Schofield. That's still very young, and people are still going to question whether this man has in fact been groomed by Schofield.
The trouble is, though, that's all speculation, isn't it? And Philip's been very keen to stress that everything was above the law.
Yeah. Totally. But I guess there is that question of abusing your power and abusing your authority, and how far did ITV really go to make sure that this man was protected?
Do you think, though, Stephanie, now that there are questions to be asked of the powers that be over ITV, and that more senior heads will probably roll over this one?
I think so, because you can't sweep this situation underneath the carpet now. And it's just the more damage, even though it was a legal and consensual relationship, you still have your shining star, Philip Schofield, who hasn't been embroiled in something like this. And people are going to ask, why did it go on for so long? And there's so many people that are involved, including our own Eamon Holmes and Ruth Langsford. There's so many people who were intrinsically involved in this situation, so I think there's more to come from this.
So, now the question, I mean, one insider saying this morning, you know, because we've been saying all weekend, can Holly survive this? She's trying her best, but can she really?
I don't think she can.
But what about this morning as a brand?
To be honest, what I think from even before this scandal came out, a lot of people have been saying we have a wealth of talent, of TV talent in this country, and it seems like this morning has grown stale. From Qgate, people were kind of talking about how they were bored of Holly and Phil, and ITV just seemed determined to keep them there and keep the show there. So there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to have to rebrand, because, to be honest, now the show, people aren't going to be focused on the show, they're going to be focused on the controversy. Holly, I take my hats off to her that she still wants to push through, but is she really going to be able to do her job with all this pressure and knowing that the public can just tweet, Instagram all this abuse to her and the show? So I think if ITV know what's best for them, they would want to change and rebrand.
Do you... I mean, Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary are said to be furious, because they're the ones that are tipped to take over if This Morning survives and it does need a new presenter. Alison and Dermot are the favourites to do so. But the story in one of the papers today is that they are furious that they had to pay tribute to Schofield. And let's face it, it was a very weird, stilted... It was like an obituary.
It was. It was only a week ago, you know, he stood down and people, his colleagues, he still had the support of his colleagues and ITV, and he was still going to have that ongoing relationship with them, being tipped to even have his own show. But a week later, it's all changed. But it's changed rightly so. But then you have to think to yourself, are people just trying to save their own backs?
Do you think we'll ever see him on TV again?
No, I'm sorry. It's too late now. His reputation is in tatters. It's a shame. It's a sad end to a 40-year career, because he was very much loved by the public, and ITV, he was one of their most bankable stars. But now you just can't shake off that controversy.
But you see, that's why it's not... Although I sort of agree with your view that I think Holly's days on This Morning, and probably This Morning's days are done. It's certainly not the end of her career. She'll be able to take a break and come back to something new.
Holly hasn't done nothing wrong here. I think people are just painting it out as guilty by association, and her career will go on. She's married to Dan Baldwin, who's a very big TV executive. So right now it's all about damage control for Holly, and I think she will go on, because it's not fair that her career comes to an end as well. She's got a very long way to go. It just means that for her, personally, with This Morning, I think she should just close the door on that chapter.
Is it one man's behaviour, as in Philip Schofield, how it's affected so many women in particular, Holly Willoughby, obviously his wife, his daughters and his mum?
I think people are forgetting about his family here, because they're also having to relive this story and relive this pain. So I know even though Philip's taking the hit, there's a wider network of people who are also going to be affected by this.
We've got, I guess, we've got to not jump to conclusions, because the Mail on Sunday saying that he's being supported by his two daughters at the moment. So, I mean, clearly, it's not as though they're abandoning him.
No, and he's always been a family man. All through his scandals, even when he did come out as gay, he was still having a close relationship with his wife, Stephanie, and his daughters. And, you know, they've probably known about this for a while. I'm just speculating, but I'm sure they're going to stand by him and support him. And that's what he needs the most, because as we've seen before, when these scandals come out, it affects people's mental health. You know, I spoke about Caroline Flack. I know it's two different situations, but still getting that intense scrutiny, it's a lot for anybody to cope with.
It's just very odd to think of... I'll tell you what it reminds me of a little bit, is Michael Barrymore.
Yes.
And for those, because Michael Barrymore, who was the biggest star in the UK, and then there was a scandal.
Yeah.
Never been prosecuted, everything.
Yeah.
You know,
No.
nothing's ever gone through against him. And then he's just vanished. I bumped into him once, and he's in London, in Charlotte Street, and he came and said hello to me because he recognised me. It's like, oh my God, Barrymore.
Yeah.
Most loved TV star.
Yeah, and it's just like his life has fundamentally changed, whether you think it's right or wrong. And to see Schofield is going to go the same way, isn't he?
Definitely. But I think from what I've been reading, like, you know, on social media, it seems like the public are caught up because some of the public say, well, that's his personal life.
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything wrong here. The boy was legal. That's his personal thing, so why are we making a big issue of it? You know, he does a good job on TV, but it seems now, these days, if you are a TV star, you can't separate your personal and your
people
public
have affairs.
life.
People at work have affairs. I mean, that is a done thing. But going back to the Mail on Sunday's headline today, Schofield Lover was just 15 when they met with the emphasis on 15.
Yeah.
Now, you know, Philip Schofield nothing illegal happened, absolutely. But, however, do you think there might be a case now for the police to look into this relationship and what happened?
Dawn, it depends what comes out over the next few weeks, because, to be honest...
You think there's more?
I think there is more. Like, the newspapers are having a field day with this. Once you give the newspapers a little bit to run with, they're going to keep on digging, and there'll be more people who will be coming out with stories, even people who've worked on This Morning, former colleagues, people who've been in touch with Philip. So this story, as much as viewers might be bored of it, it is going to get bigger.
OK, Stephanie, thank you very much
Thank you so much.
We'll catch up with you a little bit
All right,
later on.
Dad.
Dawn, as a former national newspaper editor...
Oh, gosh.
No.
Yeah.
Here's the intrigue, right? Because what seems very odd is that, I mean, this exclusive that the Mail had. So, well, Philip Schofield has written to us and told us what's gone on and apologised for his behaviour and apologised to the Mail because he tried to shut them down writing a story.
Yeah.
What's that all about? Because I've never come across that before.
I've literally worked on newspapers for coming up for 40 years. Obviously, I was a child when I started, by the way, for a very long time, and I have never, ever experienced a celebrity apologising to a newspaper for their behaviour.
All right, so what do we infer from that?
I think what Stephanie was just saying, that there is more to come out. Maybe the Mail and the Sun are the two papers that really had this story all the way along. I think the Mail, being honest here, have more stories to run, and I think this is how it works, folks, by the way. It's not pleasant, but it works this way. I think the Mail have gone to Philip Schofield with other stories they have and said, OK, we need to work together on this, damage limitation as far as we can make it for you. So I think they've got more on Philip Schofield, that he is now apologising to them and working with them to stop these stories coming out. Right. It's not pleasant, but that's how it works. I'm sorry, that's the business. So I think Stephanie's right. There is much more to come out, and I think the Mail are aware of that, and they've gone to Schofield and said, right, you work with us or we are going to really go to town. Really go to town, as if today's headline isn't going to town in any case. Yeah. OK, well, if you've got a thought on that, GBviews at gbnews.com. Touching on that and looking at the brand, not just Philip's brand, but ITV's brand as a result of all of this, a little bit later on in the programme. It's 6:13. 7 people have been charged with the attempted murder of Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell in Northern Ireland. He was shot multiple times at a sports complex in Omagh in February. 4 other people who were arrested as part of the investigation were released pending a report to the Public Prosecution Service, and the investigation is ongoing. Labour has accused the government of failing to support people with ill health. The party claims more than 500 million working days have been lost to sickness since the last general election. The Office for National Statistics say the number of working days lost to sickness hit over 185 million last year, the highest since records began in 1995. And more than 100,000 children across Scotland are on the waiting list for social housing. That's according to the Scottish Conservatives. They've accused the Scottish Government of a failure to build enough affordable homes. But the government in Scotland says it's spending 3 times more on affordable housing than the UK government. Interesting. You can always blame the government. Doesn't matter which government you've got. Any government will do. We blame them for everything now. You know, even the size of our bodies, Stephen. It's the government's fault that I'm fat.
Well, you're not fat.
Thank you very
No,
much.
hey, I'm not fat.
But it is the government's fault. We blame the government for absolutely everything.
Yeah, we do. Lack
Mind
of
you,
personal
to be
responsibility.
fair, they did encourage us to do that during the pandemic, when they literally had footprints on the pavement telling you how to walk on the pavement, remember?
Oh, yeah.
They were sort of micromanaging us, weren't they?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Oh, anyway, well, let's not get into the pandemic this morning.
No, sorry, it's early. It's too early for pandemic.
No, try to forget all that happened.
Too early and too late, absolutely, yeah, let's just forget it.
You couldn't resist that one, could you?
Well,
too early into throwing another line in.
Come on, tabloid journalist, you brought that bit up, not me.
Yeah, that's true. Now, Tory MPs are pressuring the Home Office to bring in stricter measures after figures this week showed 1.2 million people migrated to the UK in 2022. Slightly misleading figure. It was a net migration of 600,000, so half of them left again. It's also been revealed that nearly 12,000 offenders who are eligible for deportation are still in the country.
That doesn't include us, by the way. Ministers want to raise the income threshold required for migrants to bring relatives to Britain, with the Home Secretary concerned that some nationalities are using the rules to move their families to the UK.
Let's talk to political commentator Peter Spencer. Morning to you, Peter. Oh, what a tangled web everybody weaves with this one. Everybody seems to want to bring migration down. Nobody seems to know how.
Well, that is a questionable point to make, if I may say so, because most certainly Suella Braverman wants to bring the figures down, but that same does not apply either to the Treasury or indeed to the Department of Education. The largest chunk of migrants to this country are, in fact, students, and it's worth bearing in mind the fact that student fees have been capped for the last 13 years at something around £9,000. Well, think what inflation has done to that over the years. Now, when it comes to overseas students, they pay something like 4 times as much for the same courses. If it weren't for them, then frankly, an awful lot of universities would be on their knees. Therefore, the Education Secretary says, yes, bring them on, we need them. The second largest input to the figures of migrants is, in fact, the health service. And here we have a situation where there are nothing like enough places in medical schools to train our own people. And therefore, and also it takes, by the way, about 5 years to train a doctor anyway. And so if we didn't have these migrants actually helping us to run both the health service and indeed the care sector, then that would just implode. And therefore, Rishi Sunak has inherited from Boris Johnson promises to keep migration down, but he is actually kind of sort of skipping round that because of the fact that the Treasury needs, that the nation needs people to come in to plug essential gaps in employment and to raise the level of the economy. Without them, the Office for Budget Responsibility says, look, then the economy would suffer. So there is a mother of all turf wars going on between Suella Braverman and her department and, frankly, the rest of the government.
Peter, with the student visas, how does it work at the moment? Can you literally bring sort of like, your entire family over here? And when you finish studying, can you then stay over here? Is this what they're trying to clamp down on? What are the rules at the moment?
Well, that is what the Home Office are certainly pressing for, to make it a great deal more difficult for people to bring in their families. I mean, currently, yes, a lot of people can bring in their own families, and what the Home Office wants to do is to raise the thresholds here, and so it makes it more difficult for people to bring in their families. But I come back to it. There is still the problem that the universities need these people. I have to say, though, on the other side of the coin, of course, the effect of migration is that something like the population of Glasgow comes into the country each year and stays, and therefore, and of course, while looking at the demographic, they're not going to place the same level of pressure on either the health service or the education service as the population at large, but they still need somewhere to live. live. And there is an argument that says it might be a bit smarter of Rishi Sunak to play down the immigration thing and just quietly build a few more homes. On that front, it has to be said that Keir Starmer has already stolen a bit of a march by saying, listen, we are going to build new homes, and the NIMBYs can, frankly, they can swivel, because we're going to build them, if need be, in the Green Belt.
OK. Peter, thanks very much indeed. I never understand with this one. And I get that we do need people to come in.
Yes.
Right? And,
yeah.
to work in education and health and all the rest of it. Certainly while we get sort of on our feet, if you like. But why do we need in excess of 500,000 people every year?
Well, this goes
There aren't
back...
that many jobs that are being generated every year.
Well, this goes back to what Suella said as well, wasn't it? About Brits not wanting to do some jobs.
Ah, well, that's a fair
But don't
point.
you think? I mean, some jobs aren't actually looked down on now.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, my dad was a lorry driver, and it's like, you know, you get someone who's gone to university, come out with £50,000 worth of debt, and it's like, well, you want me to go and drive an HGV now? People don't want to do those jobs, so that's why we need to bring people in. But...
Well, no, but they should do those jobs. And let's be honest, I always get very annoyed when people look down on jobs, things like that.
Yes.
And traditionally, it was always bin man. You've got to be a bin man or refuse collector or
My
whatever it's called
granddad was
now.
a bin man.
Well, yeah, well, there you go. But you see, what happens when they go on strike?
Oh.
What happens when they stop working?
Exactly.
Everything grinds to a halt.
Yeah.
So you should be nice to your bin men and bin ladies.
Yeah. You know, mentioning the P word again, which I know you banned me from doing, the pandemic. But during the pandemic, who are the people that we relied on to keep the country going? It wasn't the accountants sitting in the sitting watching Loose Swimming on TV or GBNews on TV, was it? It was the people out there picking the litter up, delivering the stuff.
On the checkouts at the supermarkets, filling the shelves, all those sort of jobs. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Job snobism.
It's a terrible thing, actually.
It is, absolutely. Mind you, we are lucky we've got really, really comfortable, lovely jobs here. I mean, you know...
but I tell you what, jobs... Always, my mother, and she was a teacher, always didn't have any ambitions for us to be great and glorious people.
Good, because you'd have let her down.
She'd let her down, yeah. But what she said was, I just want them to reach their potential. This is when we were very little. I just want them to reach their potential.
Yeah.
And if their potential is to be a binman, I want them to be the best binman they can be. And that's what it's about. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you do the best that you're capable of doing.
Yes, totally, and that's it. And yeah, the sneering at traditional working-class jobs, stop it.
No, quite right. Anyway, look, we've got big changes to the famous Transpennine Express. We'll get more from Simon Calder next. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Dawn. Now, remember to get in touch with us at gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Oh, .com now.
Oh, is it .com?
It's .com now.
Oh, it's .com now.
We've changed.
Oh, we've changed.
Yeah, we've got upmarket.
I learned that. And they've changed it. As soon as I remember it, they change it.
I know. It's always the way. Man, loads of you getting in touch about your chips. Frank, morning, Frank. If it's pie, chips and peas, then it has to be gravy. If it's fish and chips, then it has to be salt and vinegar. Let's not forget curry sauce either, because it's great with chips. Yeah, it is. Good one, Frank.
OK. Oh, Evelyn in Suffolk, a 25-kilogram bag of spuds cost a tenner.
Oh.
That's quite cheap, isn't it?
I think that is quite cheap, though I may have got my figures wrong slightly earlier on. I can't remember what it said in the notes.
See, but
it's gone up a lot.
I get the website address wrong, you get your figures wrong.
Might well have done. But Andrew is one of the... Because we're talking about people like you, Andrew. Unfortunately, I'll soon have to close my fish and chip shop due to the cost of living crisis. The cost of energy, along with potatoes and fish, has gone through the roof. And obviously, that has to be passed on to the customer, which it does.
Because it used to be the go-to cheap way of filling up, didn't it?
Yeah.
But it's just like... pubs are going. We can't lose fish and chip shops as well.
No, I haven't been to one for ages, to be honest.
What, a pub or a fish and chip shop?
A fish and chip shop.
Oh.
Fish and chip shop. I know, I need it. My grandparents had a fish and chip shop. Queen Street Chippy in Dalton.
Oh, really?
If you're very, very old, if you're one of our more mature viewers and listeners, maybe you remember it. But, I mean, that was back in the 60s.
When that, you know, actually thinking about it, our local Chippy closed down just before Christmas.
Oh,
it's
right.
gone.
See, my local Chippy changed its name. I don't know whether it changed the ownership, but it changed it from whatever Chippy it was. It's now called Fish and Chicken. and that just puts me off. If you can't mention chips... So it's fish and chicken.
That's rubbish. I'm sorry, that is rubbish.
So I haven't been back in since, because it just turns me off.
But maybe that's the thing, see, right? Our Chippy disappeared, right? And we have now got a coffee shop where all the yummy mummies go. I know. And daddies, sorry, not excluding anyone. Yummy mummies and daddies.
Well, each to their own, each to their own.
Yeah, no, absolutely, but it's chicken shops or coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the trouble.
Yeah, don't like that.
Good bag of chips in good old newspaper.
Well, let's talk trains now, shall we?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because it's trains and chips morning, isn't it? Was that a link? No, that wasn't even a link, was it? No. All right. OK, I'll shut up. All right. From today, the Trans-Pennine Express will be nationalised and run by operator of last resort.
Which is basically the government. The contract of the previous owner, First Group, wasn't renewed because of poor service performance.
However, passengers were warning again that there was no quick fix to some of the challenges and it would take time before they start to see substantial improvement.
Let's talk to travel guru Simon Calder, who joins us from... I think you're in Germany, aren't you, this morning, Simon? What do you make of all of this? Have we got about 6 or 7 train companies that have been nationalised now?
I claim that we're up to 4 now, Stephen. LNER, which runs on the main East Coast main line, very well-respected company. That's been in government hands, actually, for some years, since Virgin Trains effectively said, we can't do this, we're losing too much money on the deal. Then we had Northern and Southeastern taken into government control as well. And now Trans-Pennine Express. Now, just in case you're not a regular on them, as I am, and I think you are too, this is the company that runs trains from Liverpool to Manchester, to Leeds, to York, to Newcastle, across to Hull, also to Edinburgh and Glasgow. And they have been having a miserable time, or more particularly their passengers have. In the first 4 weeks of April, 1 in 7 trains was cancelled. The government said this really isn't good enough. We're going to take it back into public control and we will try and make things better. But absolutely, Transport Secretary Mark Harper says don't expect a silver bullet. And I say your rail ticket still is something of a lottery ticket because of the high numbers of cancellations. Even yesterday, the last day of first group running this. There were massive problems between Manchester and Liverpool, but that was actually due to a network rail signal failure. So it's a pretty miserable time for anybody trying to travel long distances in the north of England by train.
So how is this going to work, Simon? So the government, who aren't covering themselves in glory in lots of areas at the moment, are now going to run the train company. I mean, is Rishi going to pop up there and make sure that the ticket barriers are working? I mean, how's it actually going to work?
Right, it's not going to be quite like that. It's the same thing which has happened with other train companies, and effectively, at the moment, almost all trains in the UK are stipulated by the government anyway. Forget all these old franchises. That we're now on government contracts, and the train companies are told effectively exactly what trains to run. Now, the claim is that the management of TransPennine Express hasn't been very good at all, and certainly the ASLEF union says this company does not know how to run a railway. But to be fair, TransPennine Express is struggling against all manner of things. I'm going to mention the pandemic because that's relevant. They couldn't train enough drivers. That combined with an ASLEF rest day working ban means that services, particularly on Sundays, can be pretty grim. And from all points of view, it's been a lousy set of circumstances. And the big danger actually for the government is that now everybody will say, great, well, things are going to get better from today, aren't they? And they're certainly not. In fact, in the short term, they are going to get much, much worse because we've got another ASLEF strike on Wednesday, the 31st of May, and on Saturday, the 3rd of May. That's going to cause the cancellation of all TransPennine Express trains and indeed many other trains across mostly England. Transport for Wales and ScotRail aren't included. That's also going to have an impact on Thursday and Sunday. And if you're wondering what's going to happen on Friday, the 2nd of June, well, that's the day for the latest RMT national strike. Bear in mind, we're now into effectively a year's worth of strikes on the railways. No end in sight at all to these long and bitter disputes about pay and working conditions.
I hate to jump to any sort of assumption, Simon, but it looks suspiciously like you're in a train station to me in Germany. Are there any lessons from how countries like Germany run the rails that we could take on board in this country?
It's really difficult. It's a question of how much money do you want to pump into this. So, for example, if I were lucky enough to be a permanent resident here in Görlitz on the German-Polish border, I could, for €49 a month, so that's about 10 quid a week, travel anywhere in Germany on trains, on trams, on even on some boats, buses and everything else, because they've got a fantastic new Deutschland ticket which does allow that. The UK doesn't want to subsidise things as much. The UK also has a big problem with underinvestment, especially in the north of England, and that doesn't just go back to 2010 and the Conservative government. Labour, I think, was also at the start of the 2000s guilty of not investing enough. So we're in a right old muddle. And look, if you're throwing things at the TV saying, what about HS2? They're throwing tens of billions of pounds at that. Well, yes, they are, but it's not going to get anywhere near Manchester until possibly 2040, and the bit to Leeds they've cancelled to save cash. So if you're in the north of England and you're wondering when's the long-promised expresses coming along, I can't help you with that. Meanwhile, you've got to put up with very, very poor services. And of course, Avanti West Coast, which has also been, as it were, in special measures, that runs the West Coast main line from Glasgow through northwest England to the West Midlands and London Euston. They are on notice that they've got to improve. So, yeah, it's a really rough old time for passengers, and it's not going to get magically better from today, I'm afraid.
Well, that's cheered me up,
Yeah,
no
it's a bit
end.
depressing. Can we just ask you, just briefly, Simon, about e-gates at the airports? Because that was absolute chaos yesterday. They reckon they've sorted that, but is this something we need to worry about?
Oh, it's certainly something you need to worry about. So the e-gates have been a bit of a quiet revolution. So you've got your passport if you are British, if you're from the EU, Switzerland, the US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, Japan, South Korea. I think that's a lot. You go through the e-gates. That covers some airports, 95% of passengers. And it means that everybody is speeded up. You put your passport down. It then reads a biometric, says, oh, is this Stephen Dixon? Yes, it is. Is he wanted by Interpol? No, he's not. And it matches everything up and effectively just an identity and a paperwork check, and off you go. That allows UK Border Force to spend more time talking to people of interest. Now, when the whole UK Border Force business model is based on the fact that most of us are going to be whizzing through the e-gates, and they won't need that many staff. But unfortunately, as we saw from this, which actually began on Friday evening and lasted for about 24 hours, it was pretty miserable. Queues building up, stories of people waiting for 3 hours to get through passport control, and there was actually a danger that flights could be seriously disrupted because there simply wasn't room in the immigration halls, particularly at Heathrow, to accommodate all the passengers.
Oh, God, it's depressing stuff. Simon, have a lovely time in Görlitz.
Yeah,
we'll see you soon. Dear me.
You know, there is a reason Simon's preferred mode of transport. Guess what it is?
Oh, I know.
It's his bike. He cycles everywhere he can. Obviously, Germany is a bit of a push even for Simon, but it's just not good, is it? Planes, trains, automobiles.
It is depressing. I mean, it's one of those things. You do. I mean, when it comes to the trains, the unions have been saying we need to renationalise. Jeremy Corbyn said we need to renationalise. Now, the British Rail was not a happy ship.
No.
It did not work very well, but it's not working this way either. So.
What is the solution then? I mean, it's like it just. I know. You just stay at home, sit on your settee, and watch us.
Oh, well, fair enough.
I think that makes sense.
It's worth a try, isn't it? Worth a try. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to bring you all the other stories behind the headlines in the Sunday newspapers, and we're keeping this section a Schofield-free zone. See you in a moment.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
.38 morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Dawn.
Racing fans, rejoice! Las Vegas will host its first ever Grand Prix. Look at this, digitalised pictures of what Formula One race night will look like.
Oh, very fancy. That's in the Sunday Express this morning. The Sunday Telegraph shows the moment a cloud of orange paint was released over a pitch by Just Stop Oil protesters at the Gallagher Premiership final in Twickenham yesterday.
What is it with orange paint?
Right.
Right. Meanwhile, in The Observer, shows sun lovers basking in 24 degrees on the beach in Weymouth in Dorset yesterday.
Oh, very nice too. Well, let's go through the papers this morning with broadcasters Liz Kershaw and David Hamilton.
Legends.
Legends indeed.
Two
Good
legends.
to see you both this morning. Liz,
Morning.
let's start with the Sunday Times, should we? Labour vowing to make us a clean energy superpower.
Yeah, well, as Keir Starmer, who's announcing this, not heard of the net zero target, because I thought that's what we're on course to be anyway, under the Conservatives. So it just sort of screams nothing to see here to me. And one of the things that he's pledging is to scrap oil production in the North Sea in a bid to win SNP voters, because, of course, Scotland's the big target area for the Labour Party.
They rely on the oil money.
Well, my question is, how out of touch is Keir Starmer? How wrong can he be? So he's trying to woo SNP voters in Scotland away to the Labour Party because that's his big chance of having a clear majority in the House of Commons, should he be able to win 20-odd Labour seats back to Labour in Scotland. But surely the people who most want oil production to continue are the Scottish people, because Nicola Sturgeon, although she's no longer the First Minister, her whole business plan for Scotland around the time of the Scottish independence referendum was reliant on income from North Sea oil production. In fact, the Scottish Government has always said that's our oil, not the UK's, and we should reap the benefits of it. So I don't understand Keir Starmer's thinking. I just don't see that this is going to appeal to the public, who are already, I sense and read, tiring of green policies because they are now hitting them directly in the pocket. Last time I was on, we were reporting that there was going to be another levy on your energy bills to support the development of hydrogen technology for vehicles, etc. And people are being told that they've got to install heat pumps and they might get a reduction in the mortgage, that they've got to use less power, pay more for it, subsidise wind farms. And I think that people are just, I know I am, just sitting to the back teeth of it. Because
here's a controversial thought, though, Liz. Just Stop Oil, OK?
Yeah.
Is it working? Are their protests working? Because Starmer's coming out of this today.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's not why I'm wearing an orange dress.
Oh, is that
What is it? What is it with the orange paint thing?
I don't know, but I don't know. I think we've seen this week they invaded the pitch, didn't they, to a rugby match and felt the full... I was always saying they're never going to attack a rugby match because they'll feel the full force of the prop forwards, and they did. I just think this is completely barking up the wrong tree as a potential vote winner.
Well, what do you think? gbviews@gbnews.com. Let us know. I mean, we're talking of money and all the problems we're facing. 19% food inflation last month, David. I mean, it's huge. Apparently, the Prime Minister wants supermarkets to cap their prices.
Yeah. Can I just say, first of all, how very happy I am to be here this morning.
Oh, good.
To be honest with you, at my age, I'm happy to be anywhere. The last time I was on with Dawn, we spent our entire time giggling.
Oh, gosh,
But she's now become a serious broadcaster.
Yes, she has, yes.
And you've given me serious topics to talk about, so I shall try and do them justice.
Right, go on.
The story that you're talking about is actually in the Telegraph, and it's Downing Street in talks to cap prices on food to help the inflation problem. And I think they're already doing this in France. And I mean, I have to say, to be honest with you, Mrs. H does most of the shopping in our household. I'm actually the chauffeur and the bin man.
Yeah.
But so she could tell you more about prices than I could, but she does say to me so many times, these prices are just becoming absolutely ridiculous. And I think particularly she's talking about bread and milk. So there does need to be a cap. And I think it's obviously a good thing, going to help us all.
Yeah, it's just how you implement, because it's a voluntary thing.
Yes, exactly.
Which means that the government isn't going to... It's not like the energy thing where the government will pay the difference, presumably. So you're asking supermarkets just to take a hit.
Yeah.
How's that going to...
They're saying, of course, that all their prices have gone up, and that's why they've, in turn, had to put the prices up. But, you know, we hear the story everywhere, don't we?
But I'm finding it's changing, actually, subtly. And, I mean, food prices worldwide, globally, are now going down. I mean, raw, unprocessed food. And I think the main problem is with branded goods, processed foods from big food manufacturers with vested interests who the supermarkets buy from. So the likes of Heinz, baked beans and Nestle, baby formula and a lot of other products, they're the ones that have gone up by huge percentages. But yesterday I was very encouraged because I went to Aldi and I got loads of stuff. You know, if you buy the offers, I got avocados for 60p each, new potatoes for 59p, green beans. You know, they have the offers on the end aisle as you go in, 6 veg, all at 59, 60p. I got a pack of 4 rump steaks for £9.99. They've put butter prices down. The egg prices have gone down. I just think that the signs there are that, A, they're in competition for our goodwill and business, and there are certain products that they're all coming down. But at the same time, I found yesterday that things have levelled off. And at Sainsbury's the other day, unlike David, I seem to spend every day in supermarkets. But at Sainsbury's, I got some fantastic bargains in Sainsbury's.
Can I just say something else here as well, Liz, is that if they don't put the prices up, what happens is that everything becomes smaller. And all the items that you get are smaller. And one thing that I've noticed is that pens now run out very quickly, and there's even less ink in pens.
You need to buy these GBNews pens.
Well, I was hoping that you would give me a
No, I had to buy these
pen.
myself. I bought these myself off the website, £6 for 3. It's not like £2 for
As long as songs don't get shorter, David, you know, when you buy a record and it's only 2 minutes long instead of 3.
Talking of something that isn't shrinking, Liz, this is your story from the Sunday Express. Immigration.
Yeah, well, Rishi Sunak is pledging that he can get immigration under control. The figures were out this week, were the headline figure on net migration, that's the number of people that arrived minus the number of people that left the country, was 600,000. I wasn't as shocked as we were led to believe we would be, and I think that was probably a strategy that leaks were put out. Oh, it could be 1 million, and then it was only 600,000 only, so we were all going, oh, that's not so bad. And when you break those figures down, we had all the people who were sheltering here from Ukraine,
and Hong Kong.
And Hong Kong. I don't think the people who've come from Hong Kong will ever want to return, but a lot of the people from Ukraine will. And then we had students and their dependents who the government's saying they will take measures to stop. But what I find really weird is that when we had the Brexit vote, people who wanted Brexit, campaigned for Brexit and voted for Brexit were criticised by those who wished to remain in the EU because Brexiteers were saying we don't want an open border where, because we're part of the EU, people can just come here and have a right to come here and a right to work here. And what the Labour Party and Remainers said was, oh, you know, freedom of movement of people, it's a great thing. You know, if you don't like that, you're racist or whatever. I was always saying, actually, what my personal view is that it's actually racist and kind of harking back to slavery to exploit people from poorer countries and bring them here to do the jobs that we don't want to do. I found that fundamentally wrong. We should train people and we should put up wages. And it's like, it's swapped now. It's the Labour Party now, in The Sun, page 2, who was saying, you know, it's absolutely wrong to have people coming here working cheaply and doing the dirty work.
Isn't there a story that they're going to send, I think, maybe leaflets to Albania to tell people that if they come here, they will be returned and they won't be able to stay here? But that is just propaganda, isn't it? And I don't think anybody believes that. We know it's not true.
There's a huge concern with people coming from a lot of the illegal migration. It's something 50-60% are Albanian.
It's dropped a lot from Albania because there's now a reciprocal arrangement, and the thousands of people from Albania have been returned to Albania.
The only thing I would say about the immigration crisis is that this is a small island and it is overcrowded. And, you know, maybe people who make up, you know, our laws don't drive on the M25. I was on the M25 yesterday, and I can tell you the problem is very simple. Too many people and too many cars.
There are 5 lanes now near Heathrow, and I sat on the M25 and M20, M25, M1 for 5 hours doing a 150-mile journey on Friday. But the main thing about migration and the contribution to population growth is, which could be 75 million in this country by 2030, is water. That's a big story. I flagged it up yesterday. The Environment Agency is warning that even now we are millions of litres short of water, in particular the southeast of England, already before the population grows by another 10 million.
The problem is every time this government tried to do something about it, they're stopped. Their hands are tied. You know, everything they try and do, there's somebody, usually lawyers, who are probably making an awful lot of money about it, who are saying, sorry, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, well, that's true enough. Look, we need to leave it there, you two. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we've got an interesting story about what is going on in Northern Ireland, because Belfast is experiencing a boost in visitors to the city, with the numbers at their highest for many years.
On my to-do list, a mixture of tours and cultural events, mainly driven by the private sector, are seeing both city breaks and international numbers rise.
Well, Dougie Beattie has been looking at just some of those experiences.
Like a pizza pie, that's amore.
An Italian greeting on a Belfast street. Even the buskers sing in the language of love. The reflections of the past are being put to use to help the city's future.
Good afternoon, sir. You're very welcome to the Titanic Hotel. Please follow me.
William McElroy is the head concierge of the Titanic Hotel, who will give you a free heritage tour.
Circumscending our bar area are tiles. These tiles are from the same batch of tiles which is on the Titanic swimming pool and Turkish baths. Above us behind the bar here, what we have is the ship called Carpathia, which picked up the survivors from the Titanic. This is one of her small clocks, and we are very privileged to have it with us.
Belfast's industrial past is now becoming a tourist attraction. The Thompson Dock, where I stand now, is where the Titanic was once fitted out. The pump house that would have emptied millions of litres of water from the dock is now a distillery. It still has its original features, including the pumps. But exactly how is all this modernisation going down with the tourists?
A lot better than I expected.
What have been the main things you found to do?
We just did a guru tour, walking tour with Dave. That was terrific because of the inside of the history of the town, which we knew a bit about it in our backgrounds ourselves.
We've just been down, look at all the murals, you know, on
down Forth Road. No, it is. It's a lovely city. Lovely
nice place,
city.
yes. Peter Lavery won the lottery 27 years ago and has continued to invest in Belfast. His latest venture is his Lagan Boat Tours, and it's a trip that gives you a different view of the historical and modern.
Tourism is unreal. I know we've had the pandemic of the coronavirus and everything shut down, but since the market's opened up again, the amount of tourists coming to Belfast, it's great to see it. People from all around the world are all coming here now, and like this year, as I said before, there's 175 cruise ships coming in. We had 2 million visitors over the last 20 years. I think it'll take another 5 years to get another 1 million visitors, and the more the merrier, and hope they'll come see our beautiful city.
The inputs of private money and knowledge to the tourist sector has been a great boost to Belfast, whose past, for once, may just sing its praises. Doogie BD, GB News.
Oh, you can't beat a bit of singing to end off a nice package like that.
Look,
Very nice.
it's on my to-do list. I really would like to. The Titanic exhibition in particular, and
You
the
should
coastline,
do
I'd love
that.
to do.
You should do that. And that hotel that we saw at the beginning actually is because that was where all the they designed all the ships and everything else.
Oh, wow.
And it's fascinating.
Because you've been,
to be
haven't
there.
you? You have been, yeah.
Took my niece and we had a drink in that hotel in the bar area. It was very nice, very luxurious.
Oh, it sounds it.
Very nice.
Definitely.
We didn't have chips over there. Perhaps we should have done. Linda in Barry says, if you find a good curry sauce, nothing like it over chips. The best one you can buy is Mayflower.
OK.
Mayflower curry. I've never heard that one.
But I'm not doing curry on chips ever. But Keith in Redditch.
not?
Keith in Redditch. Good morning, Keith. I hope you're having this for breakfast. My mate from the Black Country says the only chips are orange chips. What does he mean by
orange
that?
chips? Oh, battered chips. Is that what it is? Battered chips.
So, like, they're in breadcrumbs?
Well, no, batter.
Batter?
As in the fish batter.
Batter. Oh. Around a chip?
Yeah.
I'm
See,
sorry.
that wouldn't appeal to me. It's a bit like tempura or something. Liz says, I went to Keele University and after a night in the student union, the chip van was there and I was obsessed with chips and curry sauce and have never found better sauce since. There you go. So you're going to have to try it.
Are we putting you off your breakfast out there? I'm sorry.
They'll be loving it.
Battered chips.
Battered chips is a bit much. Battered sausage, but battered chips.
I'm not going there. I'm not going to go near your battered sausage this morning. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't.
No,
I wouldn't.
no.
All the latest on Philip Schofield very shortly. This is GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There's plenty of fine weather to be had once again on Sunday, thanks to high pressure that has been with us throughout the past week and continues to stay with the UK as we head into the new week as well. It's keeping things fairly fine and settled across the board. There has been a little bit of mist around first thing this morning, and generally for eastern areas of England, Sunday will be a bit cloudier compared to Saturday. That cloud might produce the odd light shower, but you will be unlucky to get hit by one of those. For the southwestern areas of England, Wales, up into Scotland and Northern Ireland, there'll be a good amount of sunshine throughout the day. It might be hazy in places as some wispy cloud pushes through, but still fine if you are heading outside. Highest temperatures of 22, 23 degrees across the far southwest, but a fresher feeling day further north with temperatures just slightly lower compared to Saturday. The cloud across England will tend to melt away as we head into this evening, and that will allow a vast amount of clear intervals to develop overnight. And underneath those starry skies, temperatures will just drop off a little bit more compared to recent nights. Certainly most of us will now be down into those single-figure marks, but rural areas into the low single figures, but a touch of frost is possible across Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland. Whilst it will be a cool start to Monday morning, it's also going to be a nice, bright and sunny one with a good amount of sunshine. Again, some wispy cloud coming through at times throughout the day to make the sunshine hazier, but it should still be pleasant for all of us. That wispy cloud is relatively thin, so it's not going to protect you too much from the UV rays, so do still think about some skin protection. An easterly breeze coming in across southern areas will just mean that we see temperatures lower compared to Saturday and Sunday here, but actually Edinburgh, Belfast will probably see temperatures rise a bit compared to Sunday thanks to lighter winds, and so 20 degrees isn't out of the question for parts of the central belt. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
This is Boston, or at least a part of it anyway.
What we voted for has backfired.
You don't see many locals about anymore.
Do you feel as though you've got what you asked for?
No, not at all.
From my point of view, yes. From a business point of view.
This was to campaign just to get a referendum.
Just to get a referendum. We need people like Nigel to grab it, come on, lead the country.
They tell us at elections what they want us to hear, but they never actually really mean it.
We're proud to be GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Sunday the 28th of May. Today, Holly Willoughby says she's hurt over the Philip Schofield affair lies. So as his rock crumbles, is there any way back? The Home Office starts an ad campaign to deter Albanian migrants from coming to the UK, but will that bring the migration numbers down?
Meanwhile, a charity says assistance dogs can help people with autism. We will visit its training centre in Alton to find out what they do. And this is what it looks like at Gatwick yesterday after a major failure of the e-gate system. But we want to know, how was your journey through the border the last time you went on holiday?
I'm Stephen Dixon, good morning.
And I'm Dawn Neeson, double good morning. And this is Breakfast on GB News.
Talking about e-gates, Darryl was flying just last week. Morning to you, Darryl. He says, I came back to the UK from Amalfi, very nice, arriving at Manchester, and we got through security with no issues. I was checked by a human, not a computer. Naples, on the other hand, when they arrived, was a complete nightmare. Presumably that was on e-gates, was it? I don't know. The scenes yesterday and Friday at Gatwick was similar to Naples, but maybe Naples is just a smaller airport. It's difficult. You do have trouble with the e-gates, even when they're up and running.
Mine never work.
Doesn't it?
No. I don't know if it's me. It just takes an instant dislike to me. It happens. You know, you put your passport thing down and then nothing happens. And I'm standing there like, you know, you have to be at the right level and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I'm always confused. Do you take your glasses on, off, or on?
Oh.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. And
Last time it didn't like me.
Can't think why. It's just us, actually, isn't it? Really?
But I see. I normally prefer e-gates because it can be. You can get through them quicker.
I like talking to people. I like human interaction.
But you can't have much of a chat with the people, can you? They
can be a bit grumpy.
It can be a bit. Well, I mean, look, they've got to do a job, so it's not. Yeah. It's not a criticism, but it's not the friendliest welcome back to the country, is it? To be perfectly honest. But anyway, if you've had any issues with e-gates, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, Holly Willoughby has said that the admission from Philip Schofield that he actually had that relationship with a much younger man, which she said it's all been very hurtful because she'd asked him directly and he'd said no, it hadn't happened.
Oh, well, ITV had denied they had any evidence of such a relationship between Schofield and a much younger staff member when it first investigated the rumour in 2020.
And an insider has now suggested that this morning, as a brand, could be axed.
Wow. Right, joining us now is our national reporter, Theo Chikomba. Good morning, Theo.
Good morning to you both. More information has been coming up over the days. We were hearing some of those statements from ITV and, of course, from Philip Schofield, which we saw that statement he put through the Daily Mail for people to see on Friday. But last night, Holly Willoughby, we hadn't heard anything from her over the course of the last 48 hours. But yesterday evening, she did put out a statement on her Instagram. She said, when reports of this relationship first surfaced, I asked Phil directly if this was true and was told it was not. It's been very hurtful to now find out that this was a lie. And she said she's taken time to process yesterday's news. So that was written last night, referring to the statement that was put out on Friday. Now, Philip Schofield's been a big face on ITV programming for years. He started this morning in 2002 and he was joined by Holly on the sofa in 2009, and for some years now they've been a solid partnership on air. But in the last few weeks we've heard some of those conversations, people asking what's been happening behind the scenes. And of course now we do know some further details, which he did apologise in that statement he put out. But there are now some questions about what the show looks like going forward. Is it going to be revamped? Who's going to be a permanent host alongside Holly? At the moment, we've been seeing Dermot O'Leary and Alison Hammond taking the reins on the sofa on this morning. But there are still some questions about what it looks like going forward. And there are some further questions about what and who knew what when in terms of those in management. So we're still waiting to hear some of those further details, which I'm sure will be revealed in the weeks and days to come.
Theo, thanks very much indeed. Stephanie Tetchy is here in the studio. I tell you what just struck me from... it just occurred to me, really, while Theo was talking, was this idea that we're sort of saying, well, we know now what's caused all the problems between Holly and Phil, except she said in the statement last night that it was only when his statement came out in the Mail that she found out she'd been lied to. So that doesn't actually answer what their falling out has been about.
There's been so much speculation about their fallout. You know, there was suggestions and reports that Philip didn't tell Holly about the situation with his brother and his brother going to court, like she found out from the papers like everybody else. Then there was, you know, he put out that statement behind her back previously, about 2 weeks ago, when he said, oh, me and Holly have been through some challenges, but we're OK. And it seems like there was a lack of communication. And I think this is what has been a part of Philip Schofield's downfall, is that the fact he's been trying to do so much work to save his own back that he's forgotten there's other people involved, such as Holly, the rest of the wider ITV team. It seems like he's just been about saving Phil, and that's just backfired on him because all of his key supporters now have come out and said, we've been in the dark every step of the way. And, you know, people are critically going to think, are they just trying to save their own backs? Did they actually know what was going on? Or did they turn a blind eye?
Because there is this dilemma now with everybody involved, and certainly with Holly. I mean, you have a little bit of sympathy for her, haven't you, Steph? Because she hasn't actually done anything wrong herself. But there are people going, well, oh, you must have known. Now, we don't know everything about one another's private lives, do we? So...
And you can only share what...
Don't look at me like that. Don't look at me like that.
You can only share what you want to share. And I think Philip probably thought this had been put to bed almost 3 years ago when this situation was first under investigation from ITV. So if anything, for the past 3 years, he's been thinking this is a situation that's not going to blow up. But unfortunately, you know, the newspapers have been waiting for the right time to sting him with this.
Yeah, and in terms of... Because, again, as we're saying, people will say, well, Holly hasn't done anything wrong. There is an argument to say, well, Phil hasn't done anything wrong, nothing illegal that we are aware of. People are jumping to conclusions, and that's not how we should operate in this country. It's part of the problem that, I mean, even with the coming out thing, we don't quite know what triggered it. But it was very much a case of mixing the private life and the public life, the way he did it, this big special on this morning and all the rest of it?
The problem is like, Philip Schofield has been the golden boy of TV. He comes into our homes every morning, so the public feel like they know him, and he's been quite transparent about his family life and him coming out. What Philip should have done is he should have just came out with everything at the same time, including the affair. But what's been happening, there's just been this drips and drabs, so it questions your character, it questions your integrity. Again, he was married to a woman and he has a family, so it taints his image of this, like, holier-than-thou TV presenter that we've known and loved for so many years. So it's hard to separate Philip Schofield, the TV presenter, and Philip Schofield, the man now. It's all taken as one.
Can I just take you back, Stephanie, to 2020?
Yes.
Which is when this story was really gathering legs, as we say in the business. Now, it was 2020 when, obviously, Philip came out very publicly, and I've always subscribed to never complain, never explain.
Mind you, it was the worst-kept secret in showbiz.
Well, it literally was, yeah, I know. But it was also the year that Holly left their joint management after decades.
Yes.
Now, was that a coincidence? Are we meant to believe that was a coincidence?
Well, she had a lot of dramas with that management in terms of fees and payments, but obviously Philip was quite a big figurehead at that talent agency. So people say their fallout actually stemmed from that. That's when part of the nails in the coffins for them. So from then, I think that's when this relationship has been deteriorating. I think people just think it happened suddenly, but I think the cracks have been in the wall, and they have gone through a lot as a duo from last year with the big at the Queen's funeral and stuff. So it's just been one thing after the other. So it's quite a tense time for Holly and how she is going to manage to go forward from this.
Yeah, which begs the question, is she too tainted by this incident to stay on This Morning? Is This Morning too tainted to even keep existing?
I think for Holly, she will go on and have a great career. I think she's
doing something else.
Yeah, doing something else. She's going to have to rebrand. Right now, what she's doing is all damage control, trying to make herself be separated from Phil, which she can't do because you guys have been a duo for 13 years. In terms of This Morning, there's such a duty of care now when it comes to the media and the TV, whether you're in front of the screen or behind the screen. And I think they're going to have to really have some tough talks about how they're going to move on as a brand, and you can't keep it as the way it is. I think viewers are going to be so distracted from all the good work they do, and they're just going to be concentrated on the controversy for a while. And if there's more stories to come out, and now it's like almost the newspapers want to place the blame on somebody, and now people are pointing their fingers at ITV executives, and I don't think Schofield is going to be the only person who'll be leaving this show.
Well, it has been managed appallingly. I do think the whole situation has been managed appallingly. As you said, Steph, if they'd have come out straight away and, right, this is a story, go away. So, but, I mean, you know, there's some very powerful people who are now going to be looking at their futures. Actually a bit concerned about what's going to happen to their jobs.
Because I think everyone's been quite ignorant in this situation. It's all about, you know, Philip Schofield is one of ITV's most bankable stars. And, you know, before all this big furore, you're going to want to keep your shining star in the hot seat at any cost. But now they're paying the cost for this decision and letting things slide for so long.
And also the agents, because it keeps coming back. I know agencies sort of don't matter to most people, but in terms of the business and how agencies operate, this agency was in effect built around Philip Schofield. He was the big client.
He is.
So for them to get rid of him in that way is extraordinary.
It's all about reputation in showbiz and with agencies as well. You cannot have a client who has now been tainted and think you can still go ahead as an agency with Philip Schofield. It's either them trying to save their own backs and their agency and their reputation, or stay with Philip Schofield. And he's now tainted goods.
He has shares in that agency as well.
Yeah, he does.
Being the star, he has shares in it.
It will be interesting to see what his comeback will be in the future, but it definitely is not going to be with ITV.
Yeah. Do you think he's done? Because, I mean, originally, like a week ago, they were sort of saying, oh, there might be a deal with Channel 5. But do you think he's just... It's done and dusted?
Finished.
Then?
Anyone he goes to with now, it's going to be a controversial move. And you've seen so many people before, including John Leslie and all these people who have just disappeared off our screens.
OK, Stephanie, for now, thanks very much indeed.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. You do wonder whether... I mean, I know there's always people say, oh, it's the end of This Morning. But actually, in terms of a brand Maybe it is.
Well, even if they call it something else, it's still going to be a similar format, surely. I always watch GB News, don't watch it in any case.
No. Well, but you do wonder, you know, if they keep that sort of format on the show, is it going to work now? Or do we just forget? Do we very quickly, as viewers, just forget? And if there's some other good people presenting it and it's good content, do we care?
I wonder. I think people do have short memories. And I think, you know, that's why I'd say never complain, never explain, because, you know, give it a couple of days, it goes away. Everything goes away. This too shall pass.
Yes, tomorrow's chip paper and all that.
Chips.
Chips.
Chips, you mentioned chips.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to talk about chips a little bit later on, because chip shops are struggling. Loads going out of business now, because price of potatoes, fish going up, as well, of course, the power usage for getting the oil hot and all the rest of it. We're talking to a chippy a little bit later on.
And we want to know how you have yours, more importantly.
Yes, what do you like on them? Anyway, let us know. GBviews at gbnews.com. It is 7:14. Also happening today, 7 people have been charged with the attempted murder of Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell in Northern Ireland. He was shot multiple times at a sports complex in Omagh in February. 4 other people who were arrested as part of the investigation have been released pending a report to the Public Prosecution Service, and that investigation is ongoing.
Meanwhile, Labour has accused the government of failing to support people with ill health. The party claims that more than 500 million working days have been lost to sickness since the last general election. The Office for National Statistics say the number of working days lost to sickness hit 185 million last year, the highest since records began in 1995.
More than 100,000 children across Scotland are on the waiting list for social housing. That's according to the Scottish Conservatives. They've accused the government in Holyrood of a failure to build enough affordable homes. But the Scottish government says it's spending 3 times more on affordable housing than the UK government. Now, Tory MPs are pressuring the Home Office to bring in stricter measures after figures this week showed net migration had hit its highest ever level, 606,000 in 2022. It's also been revealed that nearly 12,000 offenders who are eligible for deportation are still here.
Ministers want to raise the income threshold required for migrants to bring relatives to Britain, with the Home Secretary concerned that some nationalities are using the rules to move their families to the UK with them.
Well, let's talk to academic and Professor of Politics Matt Goodwin, who joins us now. Morning to you, Matt. Good to see you this morning. Is there a sense with this? I mean, as the political arguments continue, it makes a bit of a mockery of the Conservatives, doesn't it? In the sense that they're the ones who've talked about limiting the numbers and having limits to tens of thousands at one stage. All that's gone to pot under their watch.
Well, I'm sure many viewers at home will be thinking, take back control. We've completely lost control. And I think this is a really big problem for Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives. Remember, Stephen, one of his key promises, one of his 5 promises ahead of the election, is to reduce the number of small boats. Remember, Boris Johnson, 2019, I will lower the overall levels of immigration. The net migration figures this week blow that out the water. They're the highest on record, 606,000. And by the way, that means 1.2 million people have come into the country. 606,000 more are entering the country than leaving. So the Conservatives have got an enormous problem now. Only last night, Stephen, in the polls, 60% of Brits said immigration is too high. 80% say it's being managed badly. And if you're a Conservative, it's your second most important issue behind the cost of living crisis. So this is make or break for Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives. They've got to get these numbers down.
Matt, are they going about it the right way? Clearly, something's going horribly wrong. And it's all very well for everyone to sit there and go, it's wrong, you can't do this, you can't do that. But nobody actually seems to have the solution.
Well, I think that's a great point. Look, what's happened is the Conservatives have liberalised non-European migration. And what they've done is they've lowered the salaries which people need to earn in order to come into the country, to as low as £21,000 in some sectors. Now, the average wage in the UK, remember, is about £32,000. So the Conservatives are saying, well, this is high-skill immigration. But actually, it isn't anything of the sort. And at the same time, they've increased the number of international students and the number of their relatives who are coming over. So as the universities are struggling, and not investing, I would argue, in British kids, what we're doing is we're allowing them to rely on mass migration to keep that business model going. So what do they need to do? Well, to be blunt, they need to raise the salary thresholds. We need to change the economy, reshape it around skilled workers. They need to stop the small boats in the channel, do whatever it takes to stop those, which means leaving some controversial legislation, reforming some of the existing legislation, and they need to change the rules around international students and their relatives. Now, that will begin to make a dent in some of this. But Rishi Sunak, of course, only has maybe 15 months, 16 months at max. So this is really a totemic issue for him and his party, and one that I think, watch this space, but I think is probably going to end up defining the next election.
Why then, with these figures, why do we keep saying, and we've had it for years now, but I mean, saying, well, this is all down to things like fruit pickers. You know, we need to get fruit pickers in, and Brits don't want to be fruit pickers. There isn't a fruit picker that can be earning 21 grand a year. So these aren't the people we're letting in. Is that just a complete red herring?
Well, Stephen, what's happened with the politics of immigration is our debate has become very immature. It tends to get wrapped up in sweeping statements like, we need all of these people for jobs. We certainly need some people to fill skill shortages in some sectors, but in many other areas of our economy, immigration is being used to plug the holes that have been left by successive governments. I'll give you one example. The NHS. Everybody says the reason we're in a crisis is because we don't have enough doctors, we don't have enough nurses. I'll tell you why that is, Stephen. It's because we've not expanded over years the number of medical places in this country for British kids to become doctors. So we end up turning away 20, 30,000 applications from the UK because our politicians think it's easier to import cheaper doctors from abroad. Give you another quick example of how the immigration politics works out. Take levelling up. Right, we said after 2019 that we were going to invest in our communities outside of London. We now spend £1.3 billion every year housing illegal migrants across the country. That is more, Stephen, than we spend levelling up the Northwest, the Northeast and Yorkshire combined. So this is where the politics of immigration are becoming incredibly chaotic and volatile. And I think we need to just take a step back and think about who is it that we want to prioritise in this country? Who is it that we actually want to prioritise? And how can we reshape our economy around people who are, you know, who have invested their whole lives in this country and want to have a fair shot? Because I think many voters out there are looking at the decisions that are being taken. You know, only yesterday we had a new initiative. We're paying teachers £10,000 now to come in from abroad rather than improve the quality of our British teachers and train more British teachers. And I think many people are looking at this and they're utterly fed up. And I think they often look at the Conservative Party as the party that's supposed to be putting the national interest first. And they're asking themselves, is the Conservative Party, Stephen, what its name implies?
OK. Matt, really good to get your perspective. Thanks very much indeed. Appreciate it. Yes, the question, which sadly we're out of time on that one, but what I wanted to say was who to vote. If voters aren't happy, you know, if you're a Conservative voter and you think, well, the Conservative government isn't doing what you would want them to do, who do you turn to? Well, would you turn, because a lot of voters are going to go to Labour, but then Labour's not addressing this issue either.
The Labour policy sounds quite similar from what Keir Starmer has actually said about it to it is not going to, you know, it's not going to do much different.
Well, a lot of people email in and say, well, reform, I'm going for reform, UK. But what do we know about reform? I don't know I don't know a lot about them. So I mean, and it's very unlikely that a party would come from nothing to, yeah, significant.
I don't think they did very well in the local elections, did they?
No.
Those sort of fringe parties. But I mean, you know, local elections are always a protest thing in any case. But it's, you know, it's Matt was so right about investing in this country and investing in the people in this country.
Yeah.
And I think anyone that actually came out with a proper plan and the details of that plan to do that would get the vote.
Yeah.
But no one's doing it.
I think that's right. Everything is a sticking plaster at the minute.
Yes.
And we need more than that,
Yeah,
don't we?
yeah.
Anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. We've got Paul Coit with all the sports news coming up. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back. Good morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Dawn.
Let's get the very latest now from Paul Coit, who's here. Morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning. And you got your wish, really, because I knew secretly you quite wanted Luton to win yesterday.
I did secretly want Luton to win. I like the idea of going, and that's nothing against Coventry, because they were both great stories. But Luton managed to make it into the Premier League.
Down to the wire.
I mean, it really did. I mean, it really did go down.
Penalties, wasn't it? I mean, it was like that.
Incredibly close. But really, you heard about Tom Lockyer, though, did you? The captain who collapsed. I mean, this was a real worry. I mean, we've seen it, obviously, in football before. This was only 8 minutes in, and Tom, captain of Luton, he's probably been their finest player as well over the season. He would, during the game, made about 3 steps back, collapsed on the floor, And automatically you think the worst because nobody was near him. Everybody starts running towards him, and then he was taken out on a stretcher. So thankfully he's okay, and he's had to go straight to hospital. But all the players were then obviously saying, we've done it for our school, we've done it for Tom. But you've got to give it to the players because, when you've got your friend and your captain and you see collapse in front of you, and to actually go on and play a game like that. Of
course.
I mean, the manager, Rob Edwards, was saying, it really means nothing. Obviously it means everything to Luton to get to the Premier League from where they were. If over like 10 years away, they weren't even playing in League Two. They were playing non-league football. But anyway, it all worked out fine. Tom's okay, which is great news. Went to penalties, which is always the most exciting way.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, heart attack. Oh.
Well, it puts you on the edge of your seat.
It really does. That's what it's all about. When people go, oh, it's a lottery. It ain't no lottery. Trust me, it's no lottery. It's all about nerve. It's not only about skill, but it's about nerve. And Luton players were saying that they've been practising for 3 weeks. Penalties. It's so important that you practice that. Nothing can ever recreate where they are in the situation, but it's a great win. And they're going to be in the Premier League next year.
Yeah, with 100 million to £1 billion pot.
Yes.
Whatever, we don't know quite well.
We think, we think around 100, it's probably about 100 million. Whereas Kenilworth Road, another thing we mentioned yesterday, tiny ground, right in the middle of a housing estate, 10,000 people. You can go through someone's kitchen and through the hall to actually get into the away end. Anyway, Oak Road, but I love a great story, and I'm a great fan
It's a
of
great story.
football.
Realistically, though, Paul, what are their chances of staying in the Premiership?
Probably 0, Dawn, to be honest with you. No, that's not. I'm just kidding.
That's not fair.
It's not. No, I'm just kidding. It depends now what happens over the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Now, Nottingham Forest signed a huge amount of players to move into the Premier League. They've managed to stay up. It's like 22 players. Now, Luton is a very well-run club. They're going to manage their money carefully. They'll bring players in. They will bring players in, but they've got to try and manage it well. And that is... that's the secret.
It's the last day of the Premier League
today,
and it's fascinating because it's all about the race to the bottom, isn't it?
It is, because everything else has been...
Everything else is sorted out. I'll tell you what, it's Everton that I can't get my head around.
Yeah, sure. Well, Everton have never been relegated.
No.
So the way we look here, and I'll give you an idea. So it's 17, 18 and 19. So 20th in last place is Southampton. They're already gone. So Everton are on 33 points, and they're playing Bournemouth at home. Now, each of the teams that are in that group, because any 2 of 3 of them can go down now, and they're all big sides. So Everton are home to Bournemouth. Leicester are at home to your West Ham, Dawn.
Yeah.
So Leicester have been terrible, and Leeds are at home to Spurs. So Leeds are on 31 points, Leicester on 31, Everton on 33. It's going to be 2 of those 3. So we know that 2 very big sides, along with Southampton, are going to be going down.
It is in Everton's hands, though, isn't it? I mean,
If Everton
they've just got to win, then that's
Everton
fine.
Win, they're good.
Yeah.
They'll be safe.
Yeah.
And then we're looking at Leicester and Leeds. But also then you start looking at goal difference, which also can start coming into play. So at the top, Man City are there. We've got the Champions League sorted. Europa League is sorted. The only thing is the Conference League, whether that's going to be whether that's going to be Spurs, whether it's going to be Aston Villa, whether it's going to be Brentford. But at the bottom, that's where everybody's going to be watching. So it's just a matter of sitting there, all right, OK, they've scored, so that means that's how it is. And
it's like literally with the spreadsheet. I've done that at the end of the season.
And the thing is, I look at it and I always then get it wrong. Oh, they're down. Oh, no, they're not.
Yeah.
So it's trying to get that right. But it is all 4:30 kickoffs. Last day of the Premier League. So huge day.
Yeah.
We're going to see big names in the Championship next year, whatever happens.
Yeah. You have a quote about Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen is...
It's like he's auditioning for James Bond, isn't it? It's like practicing the villain's name.
Mr Verstappen. You don't really want to talk, you just want me to hear us say Max Verstappen. Yeah, he's on pole for the Monaco Grand Prix, which is this afternoon. It could be a double for Christian Horner, Red Bull team boss. If Verstappen wins... See, now I can't help but say it any other way. If Verstappen wins, which is likely because it's always difficult to overtake on those streets of Monte Carlo, then it'll be a double for him because Christian Horner, huge Luton Town fan. What a weekend he's had.
Yeah.
If only the Spice Girls could have a number 1 with that, that would be the big 3.
Because that's Mr Jerry, isn't it?
Yeah,
Ginger Spice,
yeah, of course. Yeah. But then again, he probably doesn't want to steal his thunder.
No.
You know what I mean? It's his weekend.
It is weekend.
But the Monaco Grand Prix, once they start, they can't overtake. So it's
That's it.
slightly boring.
I know.
Is
you
it?
know
Sorry?
what? And I know I'm supposed to be talking sport and talking sport up, but sometimes it does get like that.
Sorry, it's not.
Especially with Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
And also, so many people go to Monte Carlo. I know that's probably where you two should be right now because it's about the yachts, the champagne, the hoi polloi.
Have you booked the jet?
No. And it's like, excuse me, what is that loud noise of a car going past as I'm trying to enjoy my champagne? And this is what can ruin things. And, of course, we've got the French Open, which begins as well. So France is the place to be for sport at the moment.
Yeah. Nadal for that one, do we think?
Well, no, because Nadal is not going to be there.
He's not there?
Rafa Nadal is injured, so no Rafa Nadal.
Oh, God.
So probably, you know, it's pretty open this
What's
year.
up with him? Is it his knees?
Oh, it's his knees, his legs. He had a problem with his foot for years. I mean, the man is 65 years old, so I mean, in fact, he's still playing. But no British woman at the French Open for the first time ever. You've got Katie Bolter, Harriet Dart, Fran Jones. They all lost in the qualifying round. We've got Emma Raducanu injured
out.
again,
She's
so
injured.
she's not going to be there. Last British winner of the French Open, do you know who that was? Female.
No.
76, Sue Barker.
Wow.
Last time
Really?
a British woman won the French Open.
I'd forgotten she played
Oh, my
tennis.
gosh.
She's been on
did.
TV
A
that
very
long.
fine tennis player she was as well. French Open winner, 76.
Yeah.
Then Virginia Wade, of course, won Wimbledon the next year.
Why can't we produce good tennis players anymore? I mean, they come along like Raducanu, who's brilliant, but injured a lot, and she's very young. But we just don't seem to be able to do it.
I mean, of course, Andy Murray. I mean, we've got Andy, of course, but then we've got other players. We've got Cam Norrie, who did well in Wimbledon last year. He's
but
he's
it's not
tailed
actually,
off. He's not.
It's not really. It's
not-
like old Greg Rosetsky. They're not.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Sort of like plastic Brits, is what you're going to try to say.
Yeah, I mean, they've got British heritage.
Yes.
But they don't sound British.
But you know what?
I do.
That'll do for me as well, Don. I'm with that. You know, if they want to say that they're going to play for us, I'm happy to say they're British all the way.
It's not like we've trained them over here, is it? They've just come over when they've got to a good level.
It's like I remember going back to watching Athletics with my dad and Zola Budd.
Zola?
Yeah, and we go, oh, yeah, come on,
gonna
Zola,
say
it's
that,
brilliant. Yeah, and my dad would go, well, she's not British, is she? And it's like, yes, she is.
But Zola Budd, it was Zola Budd's birthday just a couple of days ago.
That's weird, that's
Zola Budd,
spooky.
It was her 57th birthday. And the great day, do you remember in 84 against Mary Decker?
Oh,
and she
yeah.
was running barefoot, and Zola Budd was a South African runner. For some reason, she managed to get a British passport and then run for us. All ended in disaster.
British, yeah.
Mary Decker ends up on the floor. Zola Budd there just ran through, and it was all a disaster. And then she ended up going back to South Africa, and we never really heard of her again.
No, we didn't.
Until now, of course.
Until now. And that was weird. That wasn't rehearsed, by the way, that Zola Budd thing. That was just completely just talking about Zola Budd for some random reason.
That's the way we roll, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very loose.
Just say that. just
Is that the way you say it? I thought it was very smart and quick.
Oh, sorry, no.
Just say that name again. Go on, just one more time.
Max Verstappen.
Oh, yeah, charmer.
Doing it for me.
You're a charmer, you're a charmer. Coity, get off.
OK, thank you.
Don't go anywhere. We've got the papers heading your way very shortly. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:39. Good morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Dawn.
Time to go through the papers now, isn't it?
It is.
Favourite bit of the show, love this. And we have broadcaster Liz Kershaw and radio and television legend, I think is fair, David Hamilton. Yes. Legend, you can be a legend if you want. Fine.
Yes, morning to you both. Let's kick off, Liz, with the Mail on Sunday, should we? Looking at, harking back to Thatcher.
Blimey.
Yeah, well, we'll all... If you're old enough, I remember I just started working at the post office out of university and suddenly it was privatised and split into Royal Mail and BT and we were offered shares and free shares as employees.
Yeah.
And then my dad lent me some money and I bought some more. This was the great age of privatisation and this article is about the crown jewels, the family silver that Margaret Thatcher sold off. And if you invested back then, what it's worth now. Because I never think about them, and I occasionally get a cheque, for £23 or something. They've tumbled, those shares. Anyway, the winners in this, after that came SID, a campaign.
British
do you remember?
Gas.
British Gas.
Remember SID,
What does
Tell
SID say? Or Tell SID, yeah. And everybody was not only buying the council houses, they were buying shares, and it was Thatcher's way of introducing capitalism to a new crowd so that once they thought, you know what, I've got capital, I'm worth a few bob, I'll vote Tory. She really changed the stakes in British politics. So what are they worth now? This goes on the doors. Well, if you bought telecom shares, if you invested £1,000 over the 30 years, you've made £150. It's not a lot, is it? Yeah, I told you, they went right up and then they were worth more than double that and they've come down. If you bought water, then if you invested £1,000... This is the scandal, because we all know what's happening to our bills. If you bought shares in Severn Trent Water for £1,000, they're now worth £11,650. And the biggest one, if you did listen to SID and bought British Gas in 1986, in less than 30 years, those shares are now worth £16,200.
Is that £1,000 back then?
Yeah, if you bought £1,000 of shares
what year
then,
was it?
1986.
And £1,000 back then was a fair few bob, wasn't it?
Well, I'm just thinking iron, £8,000 a year then.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a
I didn't
lot
have
of money.
I didn't have £1,000, but I think I spent £200.
So £1,000 in 1986 is £3,750
still made a
today.
profit.
So you still made a profit, but not as much as...
Anyway, I'm sure that I just thought I'd flag it up because I don't even know where my share certificate... I've got shares in... So my bank was... A lot of banks were privatised as well. Building societies...
Building societies, yeah.
And you got shares. And I've got these, and I get these cheques, like 13 quid. I have no idea where the certificates are, so I'm thinking I might tidy up.
Oh, I'd tidy
With files when I get home. I might have a little...
Tidy, just, divest.
Yeah.
Well, I've got premium bonds from when I was a baby, and it's like... Never won anything, don't know where they are, they still there, what do they even do?
You might have won because you'll have moved so many times and changed your name.
Oh, and they don't, obviously, it's just...
I think you can check, can't you?
Well, premium bonds are wonderful now.
Oh, yeah.
The rate you're getting on premium bonds is fantastic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I win every month.
And
Yeah, 25 quid.
Yeah?
Yeah.
25 quid a month off premium
But have you
bonds,
maxed out on them? Have you got the maximum you can
No,
have?
they've upped it now.
All right.
They've upped it to...
And it's tax-free as well, so that's great.
I'm going to have to look mine out, aren't we? David, we're going to come to you now, actually, from the Times, Turkish elections.
Yes,
What's going on there?
well, the headline in the Sunday Times is that a win will leave Erdogan in a mire of his own creation. After 20 years in power, it looks as though he's probably going to get back in again, despite the fact that in Turkey there is rampant inflation and also a plunging currency. And, of course, he's had to deal with, hasn't dealt particularly well with the problem of the earthquakes. I had until recently a house in Turkey, despite all you're saying about shares. I think property is still the best investment. And I had a holiday home in Turkey, which I've recently sold after the lockdown because I used to rent it out. And, of course, nobody could go there for a long time. So I had all the outgoings and, unfortunately, nothing coming in. But what I learnt from the local people was that Erdogan was not popular at all. And they felt that he was very bad for tourism.
Well,
Since tourism is their main industry in Turkey, it seems amazing that he could be getting back in again.
But do we think it's free and fair elections?
No,
I mean, Erdogan's a very odd character.
It's gerrymandering and everything, isn't it? It's completely corrupt. And not least, I would think the influences, external influences. Erdogan, whether he's liked or not domestically, he is, as far as the EU is concerned, the gatekeeper to Europe from people flooding in from the Middle East, Syria, etc., refugees. And he's accommodated them in vast camps, and the EU pays him a lot of money to do that. And I'm sure that Brussels is terrified that if Erdogan is removed and they get a far more liberal president, then the floodgates will open. It's in the there are vested interests in keeping Erdogan in place.
Yeah, there are incidentally a lot of Russians in Turkey, and there are a lot of Russian boats that are now moored up there, and a lot of people are getting away to Turkey and taking their money with them. So, as you say, Liz, I mean, Turkey is in such a vital, strategic position, and it's a lovely place to go for a holiday still. Even if you can't go to my gaff.
Absolutely. Parties out of yours. Talking of parties, should we talk some music? Yeah, I mean, you're two experts on this. Daily Mirror and 60 years of the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, we both wanted to do this because we are, obviously, music presenters. But I've never... David, if I asked you a pop quiz time, great meet. What was... The Rolling Stones' first single was released 60 years ago. Can you remember what it was? Because I've never heard of this one. Maybe it wasn't a hit.
Their very first hit. I should know that. Go on.
No, not the hit. The very first single.
Oh, their first single. Yeah. No, what was it?
Come On.
Oh, come
on.
Come
on. Yeah,
I've got a feeling. I've got a feeling. Was that a Chuck Berry song?
Yes.
I think you know that. Yeah. That was a Chuck Berry song. They started off recording other people's material before Jagger and Richards realised they were such great songwriters and wrote their own stuff.
What was their first hit then,
The first
David?
hit was It's All Over Now.
It's all over now,
July
yeah.
19.
I actually introduced, can I tell
Yeah,
the
yeah,
story?
that's what
I
we're
introduced the Rolling Stones at the Palace Theatre in Manchester back in the 60s when they were a fairly new band. And I had a little red MGB sports car that I was rather proud of at the time. I parked it at the back of the theatre, as you could in those days. Somebody thought it was Mick Jagger's car and scratched a love message on it. So this was really embarrassing. For a week, I was driving around with "I love you, Mick" on the bonnet of my car.
No way.
And I got to tell you this, that the respray cost me more than I got for doing the show.
Oh.
You didn't have a word with Mick, say, "Oi, Mick, look, this is your fault. Can you just help us
Well,
out?"
I liked him, but I wouldn't go that far, you know.
Did you get to tell him the story? Does he know that happened?
No, I haven't seen him since then to tell him the story.
Dawn
but,
will tweet it today, and he follows Dawn.
Oh, yeah, he does, yeah.
But I just want to say about the discipline involved, because these guys are still touring.
I know.
And, Charlie Watts died, the drummer. He was the eldest of them. Bill Wyman left years ago. He was even older. But the guys are all knocking 80 now. And to be on the road, grueling tours, day after day, yeah, it's only rock and roll, but I like it. Their days of sex and drugs and everything else, it's a huge juggernaut of a business. And I know Jo Woods, who was married to Ronnie Wood, and she showed me some of the before everybody had a laptop, they always took, the wives and kids went on tour, and I think that was wise because it kept an eye on things. But the wives will be given a dossier this thick, bound, and it was all the tour dates, all the travel plans, what time you had to be up, what time you had to be out and on the plane, and the menus and the arrangements for kids' nannies, and that's what. And Mick Jagger would be going round the backstage, and the support band, the Pretenders supported them, and one of that band told me that he'd be going round backstage with a clipboard, and he'd be counting the chairs in the green room. And he'd be going, how much we're paying for each of these chairs, and writing it down.
Yeah.
Charlie once got to a point when he didn't want to do it anymore.
Charlie, yeah.
But Mick Jagger insisted that he did. And we were chatting earlier in the green room, and I think that, he was almost the band's accountant, wasn't he?
Yeah, Mick Jagger,
He was the man keeping his so much for rock and roll lifestyle.
It wasn't, was
he was
it?
keeping his eye on the old...
Oh, well, that's the way to do it. I approve wholeheartedly. Absolutely approve. Thank you both. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Oh, it is. It zips by. We're having fun. Now, current thinking works out that about 1 in every 100 people in the UK, 1% of us, have autism. That's according to a Hampshire-based charity. It's become the first to provide assistance dogs to autistic people of any age, anywhere in the country.
I love this. Our South East of England reporter, Ray Addison, went out to find out more.
Being autistic can be very isolating. The world's not really designed for people like me. It's designed for people who are neurotypical, and there's not a single thing I do every day that isn't impacted by being autistic. So just having her there sometimes it makes a world of difference, because I'm just not alone.
Rebecca is 17 and autistic. Without her assistance dog Lola, the world would be a very isolating place.
Good girl. A lot of people don't realise how difficult accessing the community can become, because everything's loud, everything's bright, everything's busy, and Lola really helps me with that.
Can I make you go the other way around, so make it a little bit more difficult?
Lola was trained by Dogs for Autism, a new charity founded due to the extreme shortage in assistance dogs. Jan Kiley is COO.
Dogs for Autism was actually the brainchild of Hilary Armour, who's our CEO. She's got an autistic son, Marcus. She wanted to get a dog for him and couldn't get one from any of the charities that were around at the time. So she trained her own dog for Marcus, and everywhere she went, people were stopping her saying, "Where did you get a dog? My child needs a dog."
Originally based in Hilary's kitchen, Dogs for Autism has just moved into its first dedicated training centre in Alton, Hampshire. Here they teach volunteers how to be puppy parents, raising the dogs for up to 2 years until they have a range of specialist skills.
So that can be deep pressure therapy, where the dog will lie on the autistic person in a particular way, and that just helps calm the proprioceptive system. They can be in the middle of a supermarket and things get too much, they'll find a quiet corner and their dog can do it. So the dog's got to do it in any situation.
She can let mum know when I'm overwhelmed, often before even I know that I'm overwhelmed, and it gives her peace of mind that she can take a step back or wait outside the store while I go in and that it will be fine.
The new centre is a game changer for the charity. But with such high demand, they need more people to volunteer to raise life-changing assistance dogs like Lola.
It's really rewarding, but obviously it's time-consuming and we need people who are at home most of the time. But if anyone is in sort of within an hour really of Alton in Hampshire and would like to volunteer to be a puppy parent, we would absolutely love to hear from them.
Ray Addison, GB News.
It's amazing what dogs can do.
Honestly, we were just talking about the last time we were working together and we had that dog in the studio that could actually sense when its owner, medical dog, was about to pass out and have a fit. It could almost sense when the blood pressure was going down.
You smell something.
It was just amazing.
It's incredible what they can do.
Yeah, really, really
Absolutely
clever.
phenomenal. You've been getting in about chips today. Now, Ray, sorry, Ray, you're wrong on this one. He says the orange chips you're on about are sweet potato chips. They're not real chips. No. You're not right, Ray. We've been told by lots and lots of people now that the orange chips are a sort of black country thing where they're battered chips.
Right, OK, yeah, Mark, good morning, Mark. Explaining it further, black country orange chips. It's not a thick batter like you get around your fish, evidently. It's a light batter, dusting, and gives an amazing flavour and crunch, evidently. It's all in the crunch.
Yeah, and Joe says, love battered chips. A lot of chip shops in the West Midlands serve plain or battered and also offer a variety of curry sauces.
Oh, God, what is it with curry sauce?
I agree with Stephen, need plenty of salt and vinegar.
Rob in Billericay, though. Good morning, Rob. Amsterdam chips come with mayonnaise. I quite like that.
No, it's a bit too... Bit too weird.
Yeah,
anyway, keep your thoughts coming through. GBviews at gbnews.com. We've got the latest on Philip Schofield. This is GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There's plenty of fine weather to be had once again on Sunday, thanks to high pressure that has been with us throughout the past week and continues to stay with the UK as we head into the new week as well. It's keeping things fairly fine and settled across the board. There has been a little bit of mist around first thing this morning, and generally for eastern areas of England, Sunday will be a bit cloudier compared to Saturday. That cloud might produce the odd light shower, but you will be unlucky to get hit by one of those. For the southwestern areas of England, Wales, up into Scotland and Northern Ireland, there'll be a good amount of sunshine throughout the day. It might be hazy in places as some wispy cloud pushes through, but still fine if you are heading outside. Highest temperatures of 22, 23 degrees across the far southwest, but a fresher feeling day further north with temperatures just slightly lower compared to Saturday. The cloud across England will tend to melt away as we head into this evening, and that will allow a vast amount of clear intervals to develop overnight. And underneath those starry skies, temperatures will just drop off a little bit more compared to recent nights. Certainly most of us will now be down into those single-figure marks, but rural areas into the low single figures, but a touch of frost is possible across Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland. Whilst it will be a cool start to Monday morning, it's also going to be a nice, bright and sunny one with a good amount of sunshine. Again, some wispy cloud coming through at times throughout the day to make the sunshine hazier, but it should still be pleasant for all of us. That wispy cloud is relatively thin, so it's not going to protect you too much from the UV rays, so do still think about some skin protection. An easterly breeze coming in across southern areas will just mean that we see temperatures lower compared to Saturday and Sunday here, but actually Edinburgh, Belfast will probably see temperatures rise a bit compared to Sunday thanks to lighter winds, and so 20 degrees isn't out of the question for parts of the central belt. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
This is Boston, or at least a part of it anyway.
What we voted for has backfired.
You don't see many locals about anymore.
Do you feel as though you've got what you asked for?
No, not at all.
From my point of view, yes. From a business point of view.
This was to campaign just to get a referendum.
Just to get a referendum. We need people like Nigel to grab it. Come on, lead the country.
They tell us at elections what they want us to hear, but they never actually really mean it.
We're proud to be GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 28th of May. Today, Philip Schofield's former lover was just 15 when they first met. That's according to a bombshell story in the papers today. The Home Office is putting out adverts in Albania telling migrants not to come to the UK. Is this the best they can do to reduce the migration figures?
Well, meanwhile, rising costs are pushing chip shops to the edge of bankruptcy, making a low-cost favourite a luxury treat. What's it like at your local chippy, though? Go on, let us know. And this is what Gatwick looked like yesterday after a major failure of the electronic passport gates. We're asking what your experience has been recently.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
Good morning, and I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, one of the big stories today, before we get to our main headlines, one of the big stories is about the Trans-Pennine Express, which actually is it's a very big network of trains, goes all the way into Scotland and all the rest of it, sort of based in Liverpool. It's been, in effect, nationalised, renationalised from today because it's just gone to pot. So that licence has been taken away from TransPennine, and it's now one of 4 which are now sort of run by the government. So we want to know, it's going to take a while to get it back up to what it should be, so we're told, but is this the way forward? If you're fed up with rail travel, do we need to renationalise? Never thought I'd hear myself saying.
I know, but we're old enough to remember what it was like, and it wasn't great when it was a national
British
industry.
Rail.
British Rail was a disaster. You never got anywhere. The trains were dreadful. They were always cold or hot.
Really, those really awful old trains.
The loos never worked. Do you remember the loos?
Oh.
I mean, not
Nightmare.
great now, to be fair.
Curly sandwiches, all the rest of it. It was a disaster. But do we need to try again? Because the privatisation system isn't working now.
It's
They're
not
talking
working,
about the West Coast Main Line, which is now in dire straits. LNER, which is the East Coast Main Line, is already one of those that's been taken back by the government. So it's just not working, is it?
But what is the answer? This is the thing. It's like everything these days. It's like, right, OK, we all complain about stuff, right? We complain about everything from the train service to the government to immigration. But no one actually comes up with answers anymore, do they? Everyone's an expert on complaining.
Yeah.
But no one actually has the answers.
No. The trouble is, there's no guaranteed result, is there? Renationalise everything? Is it going to be any better? Don't know.
Yes.
Will it bring prices down? Probably not. So anyway, if you've got a thought on that, love to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.com. But our main news today, and have a guess, it's all over the papers again, of course, but now it's been revealed that the secret lover of Philip Schofield was just 15 years old when they met at a theatre school where the ITV presenter was giving a talk.
Right. Meanwhile, Holly Willoughby has said that the admission from Philip Schofield of the relationship was very hurtful.
On top of all of this, an insider is also suggesting in some of the papers this morning that this morning itself could be axed.
Right. Well, joining us to unpick all of this, and there's a lot of it, is editor-at-large of Mail on Sunday. One of the papers has got it huge on page 1 today. Charlotte Griffiths. Good morning, Charlotte. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Charlotte, I mean, the latest development, the front page of your paper today, Schofield Love was just 15 when they met. Tell us more. What's the background to this?
Gosh, well, we now know why. When Phil issued his statement a few days ago, he said this relationship was ill-advised but not illegal. And for many of us, well, actually not me because I work in journalism, but for many people, it seemed like a bit of an odd statement. But now he knew what we know and has now been revealed, which is that they met when they were 15. And what happened was a mutual friend of him and his wife encouraged him to go to a school in the Northwest, which I won't say what its name is, and meet some students, which he did. And one of the students stayed in touch over a number of years, and nothing untoward happened. But when he was old enough, he came in and did some work experience on ITV, and it's then that their relationship appeared to have grown, with Phil in a sort of mentor role. And Phil has always maintained it was a mentor role, but now it seems that, in fact, a relationship eventually grew out of that mentorship.
And look, I mean, age is important in all of this. Do we know when that relationship, the sexual relationship, started? Was he still a teenager?
Well, Phil's saying it wasn't illegal, so we have to guess that he was in his late teens when it developed.
Well, I mean, could actually, looking back at it, it could be anything over 16, couldn't it? That for it to be legal?
Nothing like that has been confirmed yet, so it's kind of a dangerous territory. But, you know, it's unusual that they had this friendship, for sure.
And Charlotte, are you surprised at how quickly the relationship between Holly and Phil has just disintegrated? I mean, you know, they went on holiday together, they described one another as, you know, the rocks, you know, in each other's lives. I mean, and yet now, I think they wouldn't say hello if they walked past each other on the street.
Yes, well, you know, Holly's saying, she said last night she was very hurt because she approached Phil about these allegations, and he just denied them completely. And what happened was, eventually, the young man in question told lawyers that Phil had hired. So Phil hired this lawyer company called Mishcon Deraya, and expected the boy not to say anything, or the man, he's a man now, not to say anything. And he actually did confess everything. And so Holly has now said, look, I was lied to. I asked Phil about this and he lied to me. And this comes off the back of reports that Phil didn't say that his brother was facing allegations of child abuse and didn't warn Holly before all that came out a couple of weeks ago. So it has been disastrous for their relationship because their trust between them is totally broken. Once the trust is gone, their rapport's gone and the show disintegrates.
Yeah, but what about trust with the viewer, the great British viewer in all of this? Because Holly's saying, she asked but was told no. Anyone vaguely in the business or anyone who decides to go on social media will have known about certainly very strong allegations about this relationship with accompanying pictures and videos and all the rest of it that have been online for more than 3 years.
Yeah, there have been photos, and there are photos of Holly with the young man. He accosted her or had a sort of an altercation of some kind, according to some pictures. There were some pictures in 2020 that showed a sort of fraught conversation between Holly and the young man. So you've got to wonder whether she did think, gosh, this mentorship, this friendship is extremely close, and whether she asked him before. But according to her statement last night, she asked him once the allegations were reported.
Yeah, which is only a couple of days ago.
Yeah. So so you're right. You'd think she might have asked him in the last few years because there is a picture of Phil visiting the school that has been online, and they're nowhere near each other in that photo, by the way. But it has been online for a couple of years, and there's a picture of Holly and Phil and the young man in the studio in the This Morning studio, which is online as well. But I think we've got to be very careful not to identify him because it sounds like and Dan Whitten has said this, that he's his mental health was affected by this mentorship and friendship which developed into a relationship.
Charlotte, one area a lot of people are confused about, there's a lot of talk about sort of like an injunction being taken out to keep the young man in question quiet, to buy his silence. I mean, can you just clarify whether there is an injunction or is that just part of all the speculation that, as we've alluded to, is online?
I'm not aware of any injunction. Phil said there wasn't an injunction, and indeed the young man did speak to Mishcon and tell them that he's sick of lying. He said was what he told the lawyers, and of course now Phil's admitted to it all.
So do you think, just quickly, so do you think that the young man in question potentially could come forward and tell his side of the story?
I think he could do, and I think Phil is well aware of that, and that's why he's been trying to get ahead of it. Although I think, he'd say he's trying to do right by the young man and protect his privacy. But I think the young man could at any moment come forward.
I mean, the problem with all of this, and it's looking at branding not only for Mr. Schofield, but also for This Morning as a show, for ITV as a channel, is... are they living in dread as to whether any more comes out? I mean, yes, a statement from the young man involved could be damaging, but it's whether there's any more. That's what the fear is.
Yeah, there could be more. I think it's going to be a real turning point for This Morning in the next few days. There's talks that they might rebrand, but it'll be hard to see how they can continue going on every morning, launching the show, going on air, wondering, while we're on air, will something come out? Will there be another statement? Will something go on Twitter? Will the man reveal something on social media? It's going to be a really difficult time. And yeah, as you say, it's a clean morning, happy, upbeat show, and they don't want to be tainted by this worry for weeks and weeks to come. So they might need to do some serious strategic planning to see how they're going to progress.
Well, it's extremely difficult.
It is, and I'm watching it now. I never used to watch it, so I'm watching it and analysing why people are saying what they're saying and what they're thinking, and trying to work out how awful it must be to sit there on that sofa, be happy and smiley.
Oh, it's extraordinary.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what we've been talking about this morning is the fact, Katie Hind, a colleague of yours, obviously, who got this statement from Philip Schofield, the fact that he has been in touch and not only admitted what he did, but apologised for lying to people and apologised to the Mail for lying to the Mail because he tried to block a story and what have you, hadn't he? That in itself seems unprecedented.
It's so unprecedented. And he wrote to Katie Hind and said, I don't expect any mercy, which is extraordinary. And it's because actually Katie had been very brave and done a story a couple of weeks ago that sort of went quite far to hint at this friendship. And he sent a complaint to Ipso and said, you know, the Mail has, you know, got this wrong. And of course we hadn't. And so he was right to apologise. But it's not very often in showbiz that people do a full mea culpa like that and say, don't show me any mercy.
Never heard of it. Charlotte, so are we expecting more to come next week? More relegation?
There's always more scoops at the Mail on Sunday, but you know, I think there's a little bit more to go. I think there might be some more stories around Holly. I think she'll have her side to tell soon. You know, that Instagram post she put up last night, it does sort of beg a few more questions. There are a few more questions that people are going to want to ask her if she's going to be able to continue taking that seat on This Morning. She might need to answer a couple of them first. That's my opinion.
Yeah, actually, on that issue, that's going to be very difficult, isn't it? Although a week ago we were thinking, well, she'll carry on, she'll have a new co-host and all the rest of it. Whether she likes it or not, she's been tainted by this, hasn't she?
Yeah, I think whether she likes it or not is a good way of putting it, because, you know, she's tried very hard to distance herself, and, you know, she didn't do this, she didn't have this relationship. You know, at the moment we're being told she was lied to and she has had no idea all along. And she's much loved member of This Morning and has some very lucrative deals that she'll be wanting to protect. It's very tricky. I sort of think they will try to keep her going and keep her on the sofa with a new presenter, but she might need to answer a couple of questions. I'll put it that way.
OK. Charlotte, really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. This makes for fascinating reading, gotta say.
It is fascinating, and it's like,
it's a bit ghoulish in a way, but
this is human nature.
Oh, it's absolutely human nature.
It is, and you know, you sort of hate yourself for it, and it's like, you know, it is people's private lives.
It
is, at the end of the day.
Well, it is, but I think there's always a difference when people make, as he did with that, you know, that sort of full show almost, talking about his sexuality and his coming out and all the rest of it. Why couldn't he have just have released a statement, or why did he have to invite everybody in such a very public way? Oh. He could have kept it more to himself, done it in a more private manner.
He said that no one forced him to come out when he did, or forced him to do it in that way. I'm sorry, I've got doubts about that one, I think. Because why would you do that?
Yeah.
Would you do that ever?
No.
Make a big public declaration about your private life on TV?
I think there's something has pushed him on that front. But he has denied that. He denied it at the time, and he's denied it again in this latest statement. But, you know, we shall see. But what does it all mean for him, for the channel, for the show? Let's talk to PR and branding guru Mark Bukowski. Good morning to you, Mark. Can we look at This Morning as a show to begin with? Because whereas, you know, a week ago we were saying, well, it's the end for Philip Schofield, you've got to realistically ask whether the show itself can survive now, haven't you?
You can ask that question. I mean, speculation is intense and headlines are describing the end of the show. In my opinion, television has a remarkable power to respawn. Particularly loved formats. If we look back, and I predicted 3 or 4 days ago when it first blew up that there would be a crisis PR campaign enacted, and that's exactly what's happened. We have been reacting to the story piecemeal, but as you previously said, the mea culpa is extraordinary, and he's taken the knife both in his back and in his front. He's been self-immolated. He's bet some Brunhilde on some funeral pyre. You know, it's an opera. But what he said, he's lied to everybody. He's lied to his lawyers, he's lied to his presenters, he's lied to his bosses. And if you take that, then there is a level of responsibility that falls surely on here. This is the endearing story about fame. Fame for all the glamour, all the glitter, all the first nights, all the photo opportunities it is toxic. There are expectations. This is a story memorial. I wrote the book on the Hollywood scandals of the movie era, and then publicists had great power to cover up. We don't have that any longer. But going back to your original question, I wouldn't write any obituaries for this morning just yet, but we are reacting on a minute-by-minute, to day-to-day basis around the story, and Twitter is driving this. I mean, it's good news for Katie Hind, a very, very good showbiz journalist, very good news for the Mail on Sunday, and of course, you know, admitting it all and actually saying he lied to the paper, you know, there was a reason why that story came out on a Friday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That they knew the truck was heading with his lights full on and is going to run over his career. His career was over, but I'm not so sure yet that we can just blame ITV. They probably took the trust of the individual, and you can't fire anybody on a basis of rumours and tittle-tattle, which Twitter is alive with. It is a sewer. We love stories. We sometimes do not check the facts. It's called the Trumpian age we live in.
Mark, I mean, you've written books on scandals in celebrity and show business. But for me, as a newspaper journalist, this is unprecedented. The fact that he apologised to a newspaper, the way this has been handled by ITV, from a PR point of view, I mean, what advice would you give to Philip Schofield now if he came to you? What do I do now?
Well, he's over. He is over. I mean, this is someone who's bust the trust of his employers, his channel, his friends, the public, who love Philip Schofield. Let's not forget he had a long career going back to the broom cupboard, down to children's television. He was a rare talent who could present live TV. There are only a handful of people who can do that. And he was much loved. He had big advertising deals. He was a big brand, but he's over. And the thing is, he's got to disappear, you know, and try and get some privacy for his family. Because with all this going on, I have huge empathy for his children, his wife, who he's still close to, his mother. Let's not forget, this isn't a backwash of a story about his brother. It must have been horrendous for them. And make no mistake, I mean, Charlotte's saying there, oh, well, there's more. I'm sure there's more. And I can say there's an absolute bounty on this boy's story involved at the centre of this story. I mean, newspapers have the blood in their nostrils, you know that. And when they have, particularly the Mail and the Sun and the tabloids like the Mirror, they're going to go for it because it is absolutely a story of our time. And I have to say to it, celebrity is toxic. We can never, ever meet the expectations that the public and particularly Twitter demand.
Which is interesting in all of this. When we look at the PR campaigns that have gone on, it's not just what Phil has been trying to do, it's the way Holly's handled this as well. Now, a lot of people can look at her and say, well, she's utterly blameless in all of this. Other people are speculating as to whether she knew more. But the point is, she is... whether she likes it or not, she is tainted by this at the moment, isn't she? And it'd be very difficult, one would imagine, to actually go back on air anytime soon.
That's a certain... Look, she's a commodity. I mean, she's a commodity for ITV. They've invested in her. Let's think about the controversy when Fern Britton was ousted from the programme. Philip wanted, you know, Holly to be there. She was a bright young thing. There was a lot of conversation about ageism in television at the time. You know, but the fact is, look, you know, this fallout, this rift that was much reported, that heralded this sort of chain of events. Did they all know that something was coming down the pipe? Did they know that that was going to break? None of these things just explode simultaneously, like, you know, internal combustion engine, you know, just going overdrive. I mean, there was more to this, and that's the point. We're speculating, and there's no clarity. And you're absolutely right. You know, what she does next, and her PR advice, her agents, her lawyers, and everything, I better come up with the goods. They had better come up with the goods, because so far the way this has been handled by publicists involved with this is akin to looking for a gas leak with a lit match.
Yeah.
Is that part of the problem? Because I asked, because she put out a statement last night saying, you know, she's very upset and very hurt that he lied to her, but the implication from that is she only knew about this affair actually when it was announced on Friday, the same as the rest of us. Now you seem to be saying, well, is that really the case?
Well, I'm speculating it. I don't know. I mean, I've been commenting for 4 or 5 weeks on this, in truth. I don't know how many times I've been on GB News about it. But, I mean, I think that we just don't know, and that's a problem of our age. And the first level, look, every crisis is an opportunity, and it depends on the level of which you move, address it, not start flailing, throwing people under the bus, coming back with sort of saying it is actually a very direct line of self-preservation that's going on here, but a recognition that you have to, in some ways, appease the mob. This baying mob who are after blood, and at the heart of this is remarkable, clickbait for newspapers and for TV and radio. But, it will test her teams. And, this is one other point here. Let's not forget the power of agents and the enablers in the background that actually sometimes can hold television channels, programmes, up for hostage. They have a bank of very powerful talent, and therefore they will be obviously using cross-fertilizing their talent where necessary. And YMU are a very, very powerful agency. And clearly, a channel doesn't want to, if they're told one thing and they accept it, and the producers and everybody are told one thing, and they're told that this isn't true. And Schofield has said in his statement on Friday he lied to everybody, then, I have some sympathy. If someone's not telling you the truth and you are moving forward and supporting them because they're under contract, they are very important to the programme and the format, what do you do? Do you respond by saying, oh, well, look at Phil, look at all this rumour, look at all this innuendo from people with, on the internet. What do you do? Do you follow that? So I think sympathy is all round. But everybody now involved with this going forward has to really get their act together. And frankly, no one to date has provided to me a professional and an honest way of moving forward. Because you know what? The public will accept it. There are affairs happening in work. There's downside to life. There's all divorces, fallouts, bankruptcy, whatever. That is a rich and sometimes negative tapestry of life. And the public will accept it as long as you're being true to them. But if you're not, then they come and they bite you, and they bite you with a rabid tooth.
Mark, just one very quick final question, simple yes or no answer. If Philip Schofield came to you and said, rebrand me now, would you take him on?
He couldn't afford me.
Oh, there you go. Mark, good to see you this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed. I won't be going to Mark then. If Philip Schofield can't afford him, I can't.
What, do you need help rebranding?
No, I don't think so. I'm just myself.
You can tell us it's live TV. People can confess on live TV.
I tell you what I do though, is, and I've always done it, private life and public life. There's always a little bit of intermingling. There's got to be a slight crossover.
Of course, yeah.
But there is also a very thick line of saying, well, there's some things I don't talk about.
And absolutely that. And I really do. I mean, Holly's statement, never complain, never explain. You just give the newspapers 3 more days of front pages by doing that.
Yeah.
One little statement and that's it. Pick up and run again.
Yeah. I don't know. But it is fascinating. And it's fascinating to hear from someone like Mark, because he puts, again, it's a different perspective on it. And it's the way he says, you can do something bad, wrong, morally wrong, or whatever it may be. Someone's talking legal here.
No, absolutely.
And just say, I've messed up, I've screwed up, be absolutely honest. And the public will often let you get away with it.
I think they will.
But it's this deception, which
and
is
it's
problematic.
The way the whole, as Mark was saying, the whole way it's been handled has been dreadful.
Yeah.
But
I wonder if that deception started with the whole coming out thing. because...
There's something weird about that.
Because everyone else was just like, you mean Philip Schofield before that wasn't gay?
I mean, you know, even Gordon the Gopher knew.
It was known when he was in the broom cupboard, and that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so it's that. So I think a lot of people thought, well, hold on, we all knew, so why?
And I don't understand why.
I mean, I was in his dressing room. He wasn't in it. I was with Eamon, actually, in his dressing room this morning, 5 or 6 years ago now. I mean, the place was plastered in pictures of Audrey Hepburn. There's a massive poster of Audrey Hepburn in his dressing room. And all
big clue.
It was not to be stereotypical, but it was... I mean, it was all done out in pinks. And I mean, it was very odd.
It wasn't football posters and heavy metal music going on then?
Well, no, but it was quite outrageously camp.
It was, as you say, it was the worst-kept secret in showbiz.
Yeah.
Anyway. Right. Should we move on to football instead?
Yes, we should. Talking about outrageously camp, Paul Coyte's going to be here with your sports news very shortly. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Dawn. Now it's time to go back to the back pages with sports broadcaster. I can't put my teeth in now. Used to. They've been leading me astray. I'm a sportster.
Oh, you're like a car.
Paul
With a lot under the bonnet.
See, look, this is what I'm putting up with this morning.
Sportscaster. Well, sport.
Look, come on, behave, boys. I'm struggling here, people. I'm really struggling. Paul, should we talk sensible things about football?
Yes, let's do that. It's the last day of the Premier League today.
Oh, yes, race to the bottom.
You know what? And I've tried to Pricey this to try and make a little more sense now.
Oh, right, go on, that'd be
Because
nice.
down the bottom,
First
obviously,
time for everything.
we've got Southampton. Just let me have a go at it.
Sorry.
And if it fails, it fails. But I'll try my very best. Southampton are already relegated. And then we have Everton there. We've got Leeds and we've got Leicester. 2 of those 3 will go. Now, if Everton will be certain... If Leeds fail to beat Spurs today at Ellen Road, Everton will be safe.
Right.
OK? So Everton will be safe. But as far as Tottenham Hotspur go, I know for a fact that Leeds will go hell for leather from the kickoff because Spurs have conceded very early and get a little brittle. Although they're my team, I could admit to that. They get a little brittle when teams start hitting them. So you can expect that Sam Allardyce, and although they've got injuries up front, they are going to go for Spurs from the get-go.
Even if they win and Everton win,
yes,
they're still relegated,
Not
aren't
necessarily. Yeah, that's correct. So Leeds need to win. So if they've got any hope of staying up, then they need to win. So even if they don't beat Spurs and Everton don't beat Bournemouth, because Leicester sit above them on the table on goal difference. So Leeds effectively would have to score probably about 9 or 10 against Spurs.
Which is possible.
You never know.
As a West Ham fan, that's possible.
As a Spurs fan, it's kind of possible as well, but we know. So Leicester have got to beat West Ham to have any hope of avoiding relegation. Bournemouth have got to take something from their game at Everton. You know what?
But if Everton...
It's throwing me. I wrote this down and it's throwing me.
But if Everton win, that's the other 2 finished, isn't it?
Yes, if Everton win, that's it. That's the most simple way of looking at it. If Everton manage to beat Bournemouth, then they will be safe and Leicester and Leeds will go down. So these are big sides.
I'm very good at simple.
You are very good at simple.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stick with what you're good at.
Exactly, so very good.
Right.
But also the other games, I should mention, there was... Now, I'm not going to gloat in the slightest because it's not been a great season for Tottenham Hotspur, but Arsenal, have had a terrific season. But towards the end, then there's accusations that they choked at the end, which I think is fair to say that, yes, they did, because they were 11 points in front. So it's been a bad end to them. But also what is interesting is there were Arsenal fans that were spending a fortune to get a ticket for the last game of the season because they were so sure that Arsenal would win the Premier League title. Tickets were changing hands for about 10 grand each.
Wow.
So they think, yeah, I've got my ticket for the Wolves game, last game of the season. That's when we'll get the Premier League title and we'll get the trophy. And then the slide started to happen. So that 10 grand ticket started being worth about 5, then went down to 2. And I think 2 bob is probably what it's worth at the moment, unfortunately. But there you go. But I mean, as I suppose, Arsenal have had a fantastic season, but didn't quite do it. Man City are unbelievable.
We've got to mention Luton, of course.
Of course we do.
Because they're now up, first time in...
Over 30 years.
Is it that long?
Yeah, 30 years.
See, that's 1992, was it?
It was just before the Premier League began.
Right.
So there was...
I can't believe the early 1990s was 30 years ago. That's what scares me.
I know, it is painful, isn't it? And I remember David Pleat there when playing against Manchester City when David Pleat was the manager in his beige suit and slip-on shoes, skipping across the pitch because he was so excited, whereas Luton has been an awful tale the while they've just gone down and down and down. And they were playing League 2 football. They're playing non-league football.
Yeah.
And they're the first club ever to go from the top, go into non-league and then make it all the way back again.
So why have they been so successful? Is it just really good management? Because they're not a wealthy club, obviously.
Well, no, and this is what we're seeing a lot of. And we look at clubs like Brighton and I say Brighton, of course, they haven't been anywhere near as bad as Luton, but they've had their bad times over the years. So have Brentford. An incredibly well-run clubs, good recruitment, and it's fitted together. And then you've got other clubs that have got loads of money that can't seem to get their team playing, who I could possibly be talking about. But seriously, though, but then you see a well-run club and it's a great story. And everybody's pulling for each other. If you look at even the interviews after the Luton game, after they managed to beat Coventry, so they go through on penalties, everybody was very, I don't know, they were just very humble about it, saying about where they've come from, talking about Coventry and saying, you know, we absolutely understand, we're with them. You know, you get a lot of sport where it's like, it's us, pumping the fist, to hell with everybody else. But the way they're run, and I don't think anybody can bemoan the fact they've gone up, which is, I think it's great for football.
Paul, in your position as a V12 broad sportscaster...
Yes. Sportster.
Yes,
I like that. Look, I'm copywriting that. I'm charging you for using that word.
Okay. Let's talk F1, Monaco Grand Prix.
Yes. Max Verstappen.
Go on.
It's not going to do it the same, is it? The Dutchman, Max Verstappen, it's all about qualifying. You know, it seems that qualifying is more exciting at the Monaco Grand Prix than anything else, because, as we mentioned earlier, it's difficult to overtake on those small streets.
Yeah.
It's the most glamorous Grand Prix of them all. It's the one that everybody wants to be at. Going through the streets of Monte Carlo, I mean, it's all fantastic, but when it comes to a race, it's always going to be very difficult. So I think we can... You know what, I'm going to say it now, that Max Verstappen will most definitely win the Monaco Grand Prix. He starts out in front. If you can get past him, good luck, it's going to be very tricky.
Yeah.
Good for Red
Just
Bull.
one more time, just for me.
Max Verstappen.
Now, Max Verstappen will... because Dutch,
you still my thunder, mister?
No, Dutch, presumably, so he would like mayo on his chips when he pops with a chippy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
I go with that. I like mayo on the chips as well.
Do you?
Yeah.
But what's your topping of choice?
You know what? A little mayo, a little tomato sauce. So, yeah.
Together?
So I like a little... Yeah.
You can get them together,
Yeah, you can do them both in the... Yeah, that's it.
Lots of salt and vinegar.
Together, bit salt and vinegar. But, yeah, I did get that from Amsterdam. that they love the mayo on the frites. So, honestly, if I don't get the Eurovision Song Contest out of this one day, I don't know what. I might as well just give up.
Well, no, I mean...
Or to get to the draw for the Champions League.
Oh, God, yeah. Excellent. Get off.
Make it stop.
Honestly, it's back tomorrow.
Make it stop. You're the one that was egging me on.
Terrible. Look, we've got the top stories in the papers with Liz Kershaw and David Hamilton coming up. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Dawn. Let's go through the papers this morning with broadcasters extraordinaire Liz Kershaw and David Hamilton. Good morning.
Morning.
To you. David, let's start with this piece in the Mail on Sunday about men not being able to compliment women. Because I can imagine you've been a charmer and a gentleman in your time.
I've done my best.
Yes.
Not always with success, of course,
Well,
but,
no.
you know, done the best I could. This is Sarah Vine in the Daily Mail, who is saying that if a male colleague told me that the dress that I was wearing, he liked it and was complimentary about it, I would be delighted. She said, I might think it was a little bit fruity, but what's wrong with that? Telling a woman she looks nice in a dress is now such a sin, it can lead to men being cancelled. For example, the chair of Tesco and also Barrett Holmes. These are people who have been cancelled because they committed the terrible sin of complimenting a woman about what she's wearing.
But that can't... Because I say to people all the time, well, you look lovely, especially when the ladies that you work with, oh, you look lovely today.
Yeah.
Is that all they're saying and it's getting them into trouble?
Well, that's all it needs. I mean, it's got really silly, hasn't it? Because men are so worried about this.
You said, I'll come on that in a second, or rhetorically turn up. But I think people have, for many years now, got sexism and sexiness confused. Somebody sent me a message the other day. I had a full-page article in the Daily Telegraph, and there I was in one of my mini-skirts, and he said, I know him very well.
Oh, I saw that picture. You look lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He said, do you mind me...
Westwood, that.
Do you mind me saying that you look very leggy and sexy in the Daily Telegraph today? And I went, do I mind? Why would I mind?
Yeah.
You know, that's a compliment to say you look attractive.
Yeah.
And you're easy on the eye, and it's a nice thing to look at. It's not saying, you sleep with me and I'll give you a job, which is topical, which is a different kind of thing. One is sexy or sexual, and one is sexist. If we weren't flattering to each other and sexy, the world, the human race would die out. And I was saying to a friend the other day, there are now men who are so terrified of telling you that they like you or paying you a compliment. It's quite sad, really.
It is sad.
Yeah.
It's in the workplace that we're talking about, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
It's in
but
the
even
workplace.
so, even so, you can say, you know, women compliment you in the workplace on what you're wearing, don't they, Dawn? We compliment each other.
The first thing I say to Stephen, well, not quite the first thing, but, you know, look really lovely.
And by the way, in the past, that's how most people met in the workplace.
Well, exactly.
It wasn't through the kind of dating that they get nowadays.
No.
I think sometimes men feel they can't do anything right these days. Whatever we do, we're wrong.
Well, yes. Well, that's what Mrs H says, to be fair.
Oh, you've heard.
I think it's terrifying for especially young young men, must be terrifying to know what you're allowed to say, how you're going to get in trouble, how to let your feelings be known.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
And older men are now older men who had gone up to you at one point and gone, "Whoa, you look fit in that." And now, do you mind if I mention that?
Yeah, but well, it's getting the balance right, I guess. Liz, let's have a look at Tina Turner, should we, in the Sunday Mirror?
Well, there's my kind of girl. The story today, of course, she died in the last week or so. Yeah. And the latest is that there's going to be a Tina Turner museum, which is very appropriate. And this is a partner and, more latterly, husband of 10 years, a toy boy, who's going to turn their multi-million-pound mansion on Lake Zurich into a museum with all her clothes and memorabilia. I think that'll be a real draw for people.
Oh, yeah.
And a real, you know, really good memorial.
Probably
too sad, isn't it? Every room would... It's like that Four Tops song, 7 rooms of gloom. You'd probably... I don't know. But anyway, I think that's a fitting tribute.
I think it's a lovely idea.
But on the subject of sexy and sexist...
Oh, right.
Yeah. And you weren't being sexist, you my mate, but you did say rather prissy last time I was here. Oh, I've never seen you in a skirt that touched your knees. Anyway, today I'm wearing an ankle-length skirt, everybody, to please Stephen, but not really. What Tina Turner... I love Tina Turner.
I've seen you in a bikini.
Yeah.
You know, nothing shocks me anymore, Liz.
Well, Tina Turner I was a big fan of hers with her 60s stuff with Ike and Tina Turner. River Deep Mountain High was my karaoke piece, top turn, and all the other stuff, Nutbush. But she made a comeback in 1983. Suddenly, she came back and she was there in a black leather miniskirt and fishnet tights and her hair all spiked. We all had her hair razor cut and loads of foam in it to be like Tina Turner. She had that huge album with Private Dancer on it. And I was 22 or 3 and I just looked at her and I thought, wow, it's OK for a 45-year-old woman to wear flattering clothes that shows off her body, and if you've got the legs, you can... And that stuck with me for life. I think she did great things to change, you know, but my grandma would have been wearing sensible shoes and a long skirt and a nice short perm. I think Tina Turner did a lot to make being an older woman.
I'll tell you what shocked me about her. Apparently, she'd been ill for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But what shocked me was that she seemed to be indestructible. And she'd had this terrible life, I mean, an awful life, particularly, you know, with Ike. Yeah, dreadful. And she re-emerged again as such a powerful performer.
Yeah.
I wish that I'd... Did you meet her, Liz?
Yeah, I interviewed her at... for my Radio 1 show, I had to go to her dressing room at Top of the Pops, and I was so... And that was, you know, having bought her album, her comeback album 5 years earlier, she was such an icon and presence.
Yeah.
There's an article in the paper, one of the papers today, saying that Mick Jagger and David Bowie both said she was the only woman who could handle them, the only woman who was tough enough. When I say handle them, I mean, you know...
Literally handle them, I think, actually.
Well,
well, there was a story, wasn't
deal
there?
with them.
The story was at Live Aid, there's a photo of it in that article you're talking about today, the sexual tension between her and Mick Jagger. And there is the story that they did go off and liaise dangerously backstage between performances.
Apparently once. The story was known as a one-night stand. But I think he taught her to dance, that's what she said. And that's why she danced so well on stage. No, sorry, the other way around. She taught him how to dance, Yeah,
she was a private dancer.
Oh.
There you go. It's been good to see you both this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, let's talk food. We fry them, we bake them, we mash them. Potatoes are, of course, traditionally a low-cost staple of the British diet, but is that going to last?
Well, our beloved high street chippies are being crippled by soaring costs. Even supermarkets are struggling with the cost of frozen potatoes.
Yeah, well, let's talk to Andrew Crook, who's president of the National Federation of Fish Fryers and joins us from the Chippy this morning. Great to see you, Andrew. We know there's pressures on everybody in every business at the moment, but the price of potatoes rocketing as well now.
Yeah, I've got a sack of potatoes at the side of me here. They're £22.50 this week. They're going to be £25 next week. The week after, we could be heading towards £30. It's unprecedented. I think 1976 was the last time we saw prices like this, and they went to the equivalent of £90 a sack. So many shops at that point just closed for a couple of weeks and waited for the new crops to come in.
Is that what we're seeing now? Because we are hearing these reports of a lot of chippies actually shutting down.
Yeah, we've got other costs as well. Obviously, energy is affecting us quite badly. Fish prices are expensive, cooking oil. So we do have a lot of other pressures. But the main one that we're seeing is VAT, because 20% of everything we sell is VAT, whereas there's a bakery across the road from my shop. I can buy a pie and there's no VAT. If I sell a pie, I've got VAT applied to it. So we're asking government just to have a look at the way that taxes apply to our food, to hot food, takeaway food, and to support small businesses.
So that is the one thing the government could really genuinely do to help, because we were talking about chips all morning, because everybody loves chips, don't they? We haven't had anyone say don't like chips yet, have we?
Of course not.
So, but, you know, what could the government do to actively help now and actually save the great British chippy?
I think they need to engage with us. They set up the Hospitality Council, and they got big chains on there. They've got UK Hospitality, but they represent pubs and bigger businesses as well as small businesses. There's nobody there from the takeaway sector. We want to engage. We know our industry the best. We know what needs to be done to sort it out. VAT is really the big one, and nobody's talking about the VAT receipts that the government must be raking in at the moment with the higher prices, higher tax, no income tax, because wages have gone up. And it's time that they reinvested that in business. It's, you know, without supporting these small businesses, we're going to lose quite a lot of independent businesses. You can see it on the high street now. It's not just fish and chips, it's all small businesses. So yeah, it's time for change, it's time for support.
It's funny, it's something really, I mean, it hadn't occurred to me, so it doesn't if you're not in the sector, but this will get a lot of support, won't it? Because, you know, we're British, everybody loves the chippy.
Yeah, and on Friday we've got National Fish and Chip Day, so we hope everybody goes out and celebrates National Fish and Chip Day in the local fish and chip shop, and let the owner know that they appreciate what they're doing, because they really are going through a challenging time at the moment. So it's a great day to mark what is the nation's favourite dish.
OK, and Andrew, how should we eat the nation's favourite dish? We have had all sorts of suggestions about what you should put on your chips this morning. I'm a vinegar girl, have to admit.
Curry sauce or mushy peas?
What
would you have?
What's the best way?
I think mushy peas makes it a nutritionally balanced dish, so that's what I always go for. I do like a bit of tartar sauce, but I'm a big fan of vinegar as well.
Yeah, and I've got to ask you, because I know you're Lancashire, loads of people say getting in touch from the Black Country, talking about orange chips, battered chips. I've never heard of them. Do you do them? Have you tried them at least?
I have tried them. It's mostly in the Black Country. There's a shop in Exmouth that makes them. They're called Crispies, so they made a name for themselves with battered chips down there. But I think it's a step too far for the Northwest.
Yeah, no, as a fellow Northwesterner, I'd agree with you there. Andrew, it's a joy to see you, as always. Thanks very much indeed. I'll have some scraps in mine, please.
Thank you.
Love it. Love it. And it's just something wonderfully British and fabulous about bag of chips.
By the seaside in particular.
This is GB News. Latest on the Schofield saga heading your way.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There's plenty of fine weather to be had once again on Sunday, thanks to high pressure that has been with us throughout the past week and continues to stay with the UK as we head into the new week as well. It's keeping things fairly fine and settled across the board. There has been a little bit of mist around first thing this morning, and generally for eastern areas of England, Sunday will be a bit cloudier compared to Saturday. That cloud might produce the odd light shower, but you will be unlucky to get hit by one of those. For the southwestern areas of England, Wales, up into Scotland and Northern Ireland, there'll be a good amount of sunshine throughout the day. It might be hazy in places as some wispy cloud pushes through, but still fine if you are heading outside. Highest temperatures of 22, 23 degrees across the far southwest, but a fresher feeling day further north with temperatures just slightly lower compared to Saturday. The cloud across England will tend to melt away as we head into this evening, and that will allow a vast amount of clear intervals to develop overnight. And underneath those starry skies, temperatures will just drop off a little bit more compared to recent nights. Certainly most of us will now be down into those single-figure marks, but rural areas into the low single figures, but a touch of frost is possible across Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland. Whilst it will be a cool start to Monday morning, it's also going to be a nice, bright and sunny one with a good amount of sunshine. Again, some wispy cloud coming through at times throughout the day to make the sunshine hazier, but it should still be pleasant for all of us. That wispy cloud is relatively thin, so it's not going to protect you too much from the UV rays, so do still think about some skin protection. An easterly breeze coming in across southern areas will just mean that we see temperatures lower compared to Saturday and Sunday here, but actually Edinburgh, Belfast will probably see temperatures rise a bit compared to Sunday thanks to lighter winds, and so 20 degrees isn't out of the question for parts of the central belt. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, 9 o'clock, Sunday the 28th of May. Today, Philip Schofield's former lover was just 15 when they met. That's according to a bombshell story in the papers today. The Home Office is putting up adverts in Albania telling migrants not to come to the UK. Is this the best they can do?
And this is what Gatwick looked like yesterday after a major failure of the electronic passport gates. We're asking what your experience has been like recently.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Dawn Neeson. And this is Breakfast on GB News.
Are you getting on a train anytime soon? Are you a regular on the Transpennine Express? Well, it's not called that anymore. It's just called the Transpennine Railway, I think, because it's been taken back by the government because the service has been so bad.
Because it doesn't go trans or Pennine, it doesn't go anywhere, basically, does it?
Not often enough, and certainly not on time. So what should we do with the railways? Because this is the fourth one that's been, in effect, renationalised. It's meant to be a temporary measure, but whether it will be or not, I don't know. East Coast Main Line's already gone. West Coast Main Line, they're looking at it. It's under special measures, so that could be the next one to go. So are we, by hook or by crook, renationalising the entire network?
Which is going back in time to a time that I remember as not being a great time to get on the railways, to be honest with you. I mean, they're not great now, but they weren't great then.
No, that's the problem. I think people who come... Like when Jeremy Corbyn was pushing for it, wasn't it? It was part of the manifesto.
Yeah.
Renationalise the rails.
Yeah.
Of course, anyone of a certain age is saying, well, it was a disaster.
It was a disaster then. You know what I don't understand with the way the railways operate now? It's like the tracks are operated by one company, the trains are operated by another, and so it's always a disaster of too many people trying to run things and no one actually running things at all.
Yeah, it's like the government runs and owns Network Rail. So the government owns the tracks.
Yeah.
But then what you did get with privatisation was things like Virgin, Richard Branson, they introduced those new trains. The British rail trains were awful.
Yes, oh God, yes.
So you got all those, the Pendolinos.
Yeah, the high-speed trains.
Yeah.
But wasn't there a problem with them? Didn't they make people feel sick at one point?
Oh, I think we got used to it, didn't we? They bend when you go around the track.
Yeah.
They can go faster.
Yeah.
So that brought that sort of investment in, which you weren't getting with British Rail. So there have been benefits with that, but now it all seems to be
It's going apart. So where's all the money going? Because it's not cheap, is it? I mean, it's actually cheap, and you can't do it for the environment, I know, but it's actually cheaper to fly than it is to get the train to most parts of the UK.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And we subsidise the rails as well.
It's not
even though they're run by private companies. So I do not understand how it works. And it's so expensive. I think we were talking to Simon Calder earlier on. He's in Germany at the moment. He was saying for €49 a month, you can travel anywhere in Germany. Trains, buses, trams.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Think how much you might spend on a season ticket. You know, £7,000 a year.
Yeah. And they go up all the time as well, and they are going up bearing no relation to the service you're getting. You pay more, service gets worse.
But, of course, the German government is subsidising that a lot more heavily than we do over here. Is that the way to do it?
Well, we're skint, evidently. The government, not us personally.
Well, so is Germany.
Yeah, that's true. They're in a pretty bad state financially as well.
So, it's very confusing. If you've got any ideas of how we keep the trains going or how we do it, I do not know. But let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
You know, it's not just Germany either. We're off to Prague next week.
Oh, are you? Oh, lovely.
With British Airways. Let's hope they get the passport e-gates working. Indeed, yeah. And getting the train to Heathrow. Marvellous. It sounds like a joy. But they've got a system as well where you can go to the capital city, Czechoslovakia, obviously, and buy a pass, and it covers rail, buses and trams, and also covers museums as well.
Really?
Yeah. So they've...
That's about €2.50 or something. Ridiculously cheap.
Oh, no, it wasn't ridiculously cheap, but it covers everything. And then, you know, there's no limits on it.
Yeah. Talk about the e-gates and everything, though. Dan in Peterborough says, last year I was threatened with 3 imprisonments by German border force because my UK passport was not stamped on entry. I thought it was their job to know which passports to stamp. Well, that's the point with e-gates when you go to a European... You get through the e-gates, but in a European country, but you still got to have your passport stamped. Sometimes you go through it twice, don't you?
That's a waste of time, then.
Yeah.
Unless they invent an e-gate where stamps your passport at the same time. But it never works for me in any case. I just don't think people want me in the country.
Barry in Barton says, when it comes to the rails, nobody's on a winner. When railways were nationalised, it was dreadful. But then you have the NHS, which is nationalised and is dreadful. So should the NHS go private? I think not. I don't know. I might be the only... I mean, who knows? Even the Labour Party saying the NHS needs to be sort of
This is the
redone.
problem. We're all sitting here and criticising. No one's coming up with answers.
Nobody knows, do they? Nobody knows. Now, looking at some other headlines for you this morning, Tory MPs are pressuring the Home Office to bring in stricter measures after we saw that sort of record net migration, which actually was 606,000 in 2022. And it's also been revealed, sort of to add fuel to the fire, 12,000 offenders who are eligible to be deported haven't been.
Why? Ministers want to raise the income threshold required for migrants to bring relatives to Britain, with the Home Secretary concerned that some nationalities are using the rules to move their families to the UK.
Let's talk to Camilla Tominey, who's here ahead of her show at 9:30. Morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
And you.
Looking gorgeous.
Thank you, darling.
Very gorgeous.
Thank you very much.
You see, that'd be a sexist comment if it was said
Not
by
in
me,
my world.
apparently.
I think we should still be able to compliment a woman on their dress, and a man, in fact.
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
you're looking dapper.
Thank you very much. I'm just off to play snooker after this.
As long as you don't get kiboshed by Just Stop Oil activists throwing orange powder. You're right. Yeah.
Nothing would surprise me anymore. This migration issue is just getting worse and worse for the government with every passing day.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that Rishi Sunak's focus is on illegal migration, because obviously stop the boats is one of his 5 pledges, his deliverables, Dawn, as you're well familiar with. And yet this 606,000 figure, I mean, I think that's probably going to be playing on the doorsteps with MPs, you know, knocking around on their constituencies. And people are worried, I think, about the effect on Britain's infrastructure, on our housing availability and all the rest of it. And what's interesting is there now seems to be yet another split in the Tory party about this issue, because on one hand, you've got Jeremy Hunt basically advocating more immigration, saying that it helps to boost the economy, the argument being that those who are granted working visas are going to add more to the exchequer in tax, and therefore it's going to push up those growth numbers. But that's versus Suella Braverman, who I think wants a cap on the numbers. And let's not forget that it wasn't that long ago that David Cameron was talking about a maximum of 100,000. This is 6 times as much. She'll be arguing for a cap and saying that actually Tory voters are concerned about overcrowding. But of course, once again, this has become one of those sort of cancel culture conversations, in that anyone that expresses any concern about immigration seems to be attacked by the hard left for being racist and a bigot. When actually what people are saying is it can't be coincidence that we've got a situation where many of our key services are under strain, doctors' appointments, housing lists, even, you could say, perhaps congestion on the roads. That must be linked to the idea that there are 8 million more people in the country now than there were in the late 90s. That's not to say that immigration is a bad thing. It isn't a bad thing. Of course it isn't.
But there are always consequences.
Well, you could say you could have too much of a good thing. And I think people are looking at the government to perhaps suggest that there should be some kind of cap. The Tory party manifesto talked about getting it under 200,000. I think there is a strong economic argument for bringing in people who are high-skilled. But again, there'll be some who are low-skilled saying all that bringing in low-skilled workers does is push down wages. And it's hard for the government to argue against that when we're in a high-tax, low-wage economy right now. That's the worst of both worlds, isn't it? People want a low-tax, high-wage economy. That was what Boris Johnson pledged. And so I think people, again, it's not even... I think Trevor Phillips once made this point. It's not even about... The left like to make it an argument about migrants, an attack on immigrants. It's not about that. It's actually an attack on the government for being dishonest about the figures and not providing the infrastructure to go with it. Because actually, if the population's going to grow, fair enough, that could lead to economic growth. But please give us the hospital appointments, the school places and the housing to go with it. Isn't that the sane argument in all this?
It seems to be. But the thing is, with the government at the moment, I mean, sort of like, you know, Suella says one thing and then Hunt instantly within days comes out and contradicts her and says something completely different. Are they talking to one another at the moment? Do they actually agree on anything?
I think they agree on the broad principles of Toryism, but it's a broad church, right? And it's always been the case. We've had a lot of rhetoric over the last 2 weeks, particularly with Braverman and the speeding fine, about the right versus the left of the party. Jeremy Hunt is further to the left of the party than Suella's ever going to be. There should be a place in the party for both to express their opinions. Some people who vote for conservatism are more on the side of Braverman, others are more on the side of Hunt and Sunak. So, but I think the whole reason why Rishi Sunak became leader is a lot of people saying we just need party unity. And one has to ask oneself, Is it possible for the Tory party to be united? They're not just fighting now about immigration, there's also an internal fight going on about this Boris Johnson situation, these extra referrals to the police on the back of his diaries. We've now got Oliver Dowden's name being dragged into the fray. I'm going to be discussing all of this with David Davis a bit later. He's going to be coming on because, I mean, he's a Tory grey hair and he's pretty straightforward in his analysis of these matters. So I'm intrigued to find out what he makes, not least about Boris Johnson.
Absolutely.
He was the one who kind of said, you know, Boris was a disgrace in Parliament very early on. Do you remember he was said, in the name of God, go. What does he think now? Because as a civil libertarian, I'm wondering whether he might actually buy into this idea that Johnson is increasingly looking like the victim of a witch hunt.
Yeah. Also, did I spy you've got John Cleese on?
We have got John Cleese coming on, comedy legend that is John Cleese, soon to be our colleague here at GBNews.
Yeah, I'm going to be dropping that down the pub.
I know,
once or twice.
exactly. So I'm going to be finding out more about his show. I want to find out as well, he was at the High Court in the week at Prince Harry's hacking trial. He's been quite critical of the tabloids in the past and their invasion into celebrity privacy. So I'm going to ask him about that. Might ask him about Schofield, find out his view, having worked in telly for many, many decades. And also just to talk about the issue of censorship in comedy generally. He's bringing back Fawlty Towers, chosen not to do it on the BBC, which I think is telling. So I'll be asking him all about that.
Lovely stuff. Camilla, that and everything else you've got packed in this morning, we'll see you at 9:30.
Thank you. Looking forward to that. That sounds amazing.
Oh, yes, it's always a good watch. Now, here's a question. If you look out of your window tonight, ask yourself, is this the end of our starry skies? Well, that's not a great look, because that's looking down on Earth, obviously. But we'll sort it out for you and tell you what we're on about in a minute. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Morning to you, it's 9:16. Now, the secret lover of Philip Schofield was just 15, apparently, when they met at a theatre school where the former ITV presenter was giving a talk. That's according to the front page of the Mail on Sunday today.
Indeed. The news comes as Holly Willoughby has said that the admission from Philip Schofield about the relationship was very hurtful.
Leaves a lot of questions about what happens now to, well, not only Philip, but also Holly.
Yeah.
This Morning as a show, ITV is a channel. Could This Morning be axed?
Right, joining us now is our national reporter, Theo Chikomba, from outside ITV Centre over in West London, aren't you? Good morning, Theo. So what's the latest development on this?
Yes, well, it's been a story which has been brewing over the last couple of weeks. People wanting to find out what's the latest and what's happening, particularly in that relationship with Phil and Holly, who've been on the show for a very long time. Philip has been on the show since 2002 and Holly joining alongside him in 2009. He was pivotal in her joining. But last night, she put out a statement on her Instagram which said, when reports of this relationship first surfaced, I asked Phil directly if this was true and was told it was not. It's been very hurtful to now find out that this was a lie, and she said she's taken time to process yesterday's news. So in relation to the colleague who worked at ITV yesterday put out a statement and they were saying, further to our statement last night, ITV can confirm that when rumours of a relationship began between Philip Schofield and an employee of ITV first began to circulate in early 2020, they investigated and both parties were questioned and categorically and repeatedly denied the rumours at the time. So this is something that has been going on for some time, and now we know that Philip has issued that statement through the Daily Mail and apologised to his family, colleagues and those in the media as well. Further details, we are still waiting to see what happens to the show on This Morning. There have been cover presenters, but whether the future of the show remains to stay the same as it is, that's something we are yet to see in the next coming days and weeks as well.
OK, Theo, thanks very much indeed. Let's talk to branding expert Marcel Nobel, who's here. Good to see you this morning.
Morning.
Who's on a sticky wicket here? I mean, we know about Phil, obviously, but
yeah.
Holly, the show, the channel, the bosses?
I don't know if the wicket is quite wide enough to accommodate all of those that are on a sticky wicket. Obviously, Schofield is well and truly stuck in a quagmire of stickiness, but so are those around him, including ITV.
I mean, is that because there are still too many questions about who knew what and when?
Absolutely. From the start, ever since the controversy has begun boiling over, every answer and every action has responded in loads of question marks. And there just seems to be a griminess and negativity constantly, and it still doesn't seem like a tidy end at all.
How do you think it's been handled as a professional in this area? I mean, how would you have done things differently? What would you say to Philip and Holly, indeed, to do now? What's the best course of action?
Well, I think a lot is to blame is on the management in terms of it never needed to get to this. There have been rumours for so long and it gets so negative and insidious and really casts aspersions on the whole brand when question marks keep on bubbling and bubbling in the background. So this could have been dealt with ages before it actually came out so strongly in the media and done a lot more tidily. And elegantly as well.
In terms of brand, this morning is... I mean, Phillips presented it longer than Richard and Judy did. So he is intrinsically linked with the brand. Would something as... even just like a rebrand be enough if you've still got the same sort of show format and what have you?
Absolutely. It's very difficult when your brand is actually really built round personalities. And it's fine when it's an animated personality. Mr. Kipling can always behave, as can Colonel Sanders and so forth. But when you've got live personalities, you don't have control on their behaviour. And what has occurred has really compromised the brand. And just a new logo isn't enough. There's a lot of work now that needs to be done to repair that brand.
Can it be repaired? And in terms of the show, can it be repaired or does it need to go?
I think where they're fortunate is that they weren't dependent upon one personality. There's Holly there as well, who's a terrific and strong anchor. And there have been other personalities in the wings, such as Alison and Dermot. So I think that as long as it's really kind of carefully and well navigated from now on, they will be able to resuscitate the brand.
So Holly, do you think, can come back from this and she's not tarnished by it?
Yeah, I believe she has been tarnished and scarred, but I do think that the dust will settle, they can brush the remnants off, and I think it is rescuable.
OK, Marcel, really good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Now, we're really tight for time, so we're just going to tell you about, light pollution. It's a big problem if you want to look at the stars. Apparently, it's getting worse, significantly so. Let's talk to astronomer Mark Thompson, who joins us now. Mark, good morning to you. What can you tell us?
Well, we've had this relationship with light for since the development of the electric light bulb, and we're seeing a problem with the intrusion of light on our nighttime environment. Of course, no one wants to see lights turned off everywhere, but what we're looking for is a more sensible, proportioned use of light. And it doesn't just affect our view of the night sky, it affects the wildlife, and it even affects our own personal health as well.
So what do we need to take urgent action on this, and how do we go about it? Is it personal stuff, or is it your street lights and the way they're all handled, kept on, covered, whatever it may be?
It's a combination of everything. One of the main problems we're seeing at the moment is the growth of the LED bulb. And LED bulbs tend to produce a very white and blue light. Now, for astronomers, that makes it very difficult to filter out. But for human beings, we need the full spectrum of lights. We need the reds and the other colours. And especially at night time, the blue and white lights are very harmful to our sleeping abilities. And we're all familiar with the tip of not using smartphones during the hours before bedtime. So it definitely needs a national policy-driven attempt, but by the same token, it needs individuals as well. We see lights in gardens pointing up at the sky. So I think it needs personal use or personal improvements, but also we need to see policy improvements across the country as well.
OK. I'm so sorry it's so brief, Mark. We'll catch up with you again very soon. Thank you very much indeed. We can all do our bit. I'm a little bit guilty about my garden's lit up like Blackpool illuminations.
I thought it might be. You do love your garden, though, to be fair.
It is. But anyway, we should all do our bit on that one and try a little bit harder. There you go. That's it from us, isn't it?
Oh, no, it's been such fun. Thank you so much for watching. But stay tuned. Up next, it's the lovely Camilla Tominey Show with some great guests.
Yes. Before that, though, let's have a look at your weather.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. There's plenty of fine weather to be had once again on Sunday, thanks to high pressure that has been with us throughout the past week and continues to stay with the UK as we head into the new week as well. It's keeping things fairly fine and settled across the board. There has been a little bit of mist around first thing this morning, and generally for eastern areas of England, Sunday will be a bit cloudier compared to Saturday. That cloud might produce the odd light shower, but you will be unlucky to get hit by one of those. For the southwestern areas of England, Wales, up into Scotland and Northern Ireland, there'll be a good amount of sunshine throughout the day. It might be hazy in places as some wispy cloud pushes through, but still fine if you are heading outside. Highest temperatures of 22, 23 degrees across the far southwest, but a fresher feeling day further north with temperatures just slightly lower compared to Saturday. The cloud across England will tend to melt away as we head into this evening, and that will allow a vast amount of clear intervals to develop overnight. And underneath those starry skies, temperatures will just drop off a little bit more compared to recent nights. Certainly most of us will now be down into those single figure marks, but rural areas into the low single figures, but a touch of frost is possible across Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland. Whilst it will be a cool start to Monday morning, it's also going to be a nice, bright and sunny one with a good amount of sunshine. Again, some wispy cloud coming through at times throughout the day to make the sunshine hazier, but it should still be pleasant for all of us. That wispy cloud is relatively thin, so it's not going to protect you too much from the UV rays, so do still think about some skin protection. An easterly breeze coming in across southern areas will just mean that we see temperatures lower compared to Saturday and Sunday here, but actually Edinburgh, Belfast will probably see temperatures rise a bit compared to Sunday thanks to lighter winds, and so 20 degrees isn't out of the question for parts of the central belt. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.